The revenge of By the Numbers is brought to you by eSportsBet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. That's right, that's how the completed sentence goes. Of course, they are still offering their classic first-time deposit bonus of 20% on up to 200 USDT, but they have an alternative they're offering, and it's actually even different from the last week one. You might have heard it was the 100 USDT bet forgiveness. Now they're willing to do up to 200 USDT bet for forgiveness. Message them on the mod mail on the eSportsBet Discord, discord.gg/esportsbet. You make the bet up to 200 US dollars, USDT. Bet on a game. I would advise betting on an underdog. If you lose, you can message you get up to the first $200 back on your initial deposit. If you win, obviously, and you do a 2x, 3x, then you get way more anyway, don't you? Now enjoy the show.
Chris is still into the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found three. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
Gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus! He does something!
Looking for a second, he connects in. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull as well. Oh, Aunkere, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zywoo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got three. And fine. And oh my God, Zywoo! Unbelievable!
Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. I'm feeling a little under the weather, but things couldn't be better because I'm here with my buddy Duncan and we're here to talk some Counter-Strike, and there's been plenty of good stuff going on. Of course, everybody's buzzing about the RMR. That's been started for the past couple of days, and it's already just been super tense with, you know, favorites struggling. And then we've had a bit of juicy drama here and there too to talk about. So I feel like it's a good week. It's a good week. How you doing, Thorin?
Yeah, not too bad. You know, one thing I've noticed is my new strategy, this new social media strategy. I keep telling people, look, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I'm doing. That would defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? Like, you don't tell people what your actual approach is. But you can see I've obviously taken like a little bit of a different approach. First of all, one way you know it's actually going to make things better for everyone is I've already brought back that beak face in full effect. I realized that was the moment that the music died, Semmler, was when the beak face went away because it just became too real. And then it was just war and fighting and crusades. Now that the beak face is back, that's bringing a little bit more levity. I've got more of the sort of prankster element around me. And also, if you just notice, the problem was I did always understand that in those like scandals, which is just people not liking a tweet or opinion, like the problem is it is just a feedback loop. That's the problem. So then they make you mad, so then you tweet more, which then makes them come more, and then it just spirals into some massive thing. And in fact, I've noticed also, by the way, even though I can do the initial comment, like I said, Team Liquid's overrated and you can attack me or whatever, because I just keep it to like, I just slam them with a little zinger and then just let it die out. I've noticed that also even stops the cycle. That's the most annoying part, which is when everyone sees there's a bunch of you starting to go viral and every dickhead with a blue check mark goes, I better just jump in on this clout train and comes in. So now I notice I'm just not getting to that level, and which means, by the way, guys, understand this though. It's not like I've thrown away the nuclear codes. Anytime I need to, I'll dial that motherfucker up. And then don't worry, they'll still be launching. Because there's another thing I realized. I'm not going to go 100% the other way. There are still people who absolutely, I will rain death from the skies upon, metaphorically, in a video game, Minecraft. But,
Dream.
yeah, exactly. It was all a dream. I used to wear Word Up magazine, right? But all I'm saying is but the target selection has to be better. That was my problem. My approach before was like, right, just take out the entire West Bank. Now it's like, just pick like one target of someone fucked up and take that guy out, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've already got the first thing that came to mind when you're talking about this is how I've got it in the show notes as Reddit loves to tongue Yakinder's butthole, which basically is the usual is really the usual thing because he is just one of the.
I didn't read that thread, mate. Don't worry. Listen, I could already tell you what it would all say. Like I already know. I'm wrong as usual. I'm the worst person ever. Toxic.
Yeah.
I've done all this stuff here. And by the way.
Yeah.
Obviously, here's the other thing. I don't even need to read it to already know. Everyone's rent-free in my head the whole time, even though they are having their 100th Reddit thread about me, a fucking ginger British esports journalist who isn't even supposed to be the news, on this subreddit where the joke is, unironically, that is always a more important thread than if I actually did do a literal 3-hour interview with Forrest where he's like, here's what happened in my whole career. And then it's like, get out that way, Forrest. I'm trying to see fucking why Thorin's wrong again. Like, so what's mad is like, I think I've actually nailed them all, because here's what I realized. I did realize it a while ago, but now I'm trying to honor it. Is Reddit isn't for me. Reddit is like the barbershop. It is the water cooler for all these idiots. So you just got to let them have at it, you know. I'm not supposed to. If I was listening, overhearing all the stuff in the barbershop, you were the star player, you'd get your feelings, would get hurt, of course. So just let them be. I'm off in my world. Don't worry about me, guys.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
still, don't worry though. Selectively again, your Kindle will get that work. Don't even worry about that, son. That's going to happen anyway. And also, I wasn't even that bad at him coming at me, because you know why? Literally won money because he lost that fucking game, didn't I? Oh, that makes it all feel so much better, guys.
Make
all
money off of corpses of your enemies floating by in the river. That's pretty good.
I didn't realize that was another element you could weave in there. Because in that scenario, it's almost like, well, you did lose, so you took an L there. I took another W. Because you know, normally the whole angle they would have is like, no, Thorin, you're the man in the crowd, not the one in the arena. I'm also in the arena, you fool. I'm just in a different arena, aren't I?
That's the thing. You got different sections in the arena, guys.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't all need to be in the same section. It doesn't need to be in the nosebleeds or other. You know, you got the boxes and whatnot. These players are playing around in there. It just blows my mind though that he would behave in this fashion where he's just trying to throw you under the bus for whatever reason, as if like you're banging down the door trying to get interviews with him or something like that. It really surprised me though, because I didn't expect that from him. I don't think he has a track record. Of this kind of behavior.
Here's the problem, Semmler. This is why he will learn. He's too young to know this yet. Certain old wisdoms carry weight. Like they're established. That's why they're cliches. So you know a couple of them. Let sleeping dogs lie. Don't poke the bear. He doesn't know these things, right? Because he's young, and in the game, let's even think of his style of play. He is a config-esque character who smashes his way through and does whatever he wants and gets out of trouble with fancy footwork and shooting his way out. The problem he has in this particular scenario is, I am on that level of like Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer, where I'm like, I'm your Huckleberry, you kinder. Oh, that's a mighty fine piece you got. You know what I mean? So all you need to know is this, Semmler. Like I've alluded to, something is in the works. And oh, don't worry. We go deep. And what you'll find out is this. This is like that simple scenario. This is just another canary in the coal mine. You will discover I can put a lens onto his career that will suddenly make some really cool stuff that he's been saying seem really interesting and a different angle. I won't tease too much, though. It'll be fun when it comes out, don't worry. I'll also keep it fun. That's the other thing. I also keep forgetting that. The best tool to wreck people is humor. If you go too serious, like sometimes it's like, listen, if we're talking about like Saudi Arabia and stuff like that, then yeah, it is about being serious. But actually, when you're fucking with players, they're trying to fuck with you. You also do just want to keep it banter. Like, all I'll say is this. Part of me, if it wasn't for the fact I thought I could just dunk you the same way you dunked me, like, you know what? You want to dunk me? Yeah, you asked for an interview. By the way, oh my God, that's fucking crazy. Bro, I've asked a million people for interviews, you idiot. If anything, the fact I don't even like you and will ask you for an interview shows I'm actually pretty cool, unlike you. But then the bigger part is, obviously, I just decided to sprinkle my own little piece of behind-the-scenes info, which is, you know, that team that just beat you? Yeah, they didn't want you, dickhead, because they think you're arrogant. Oh! That's not even me. That's winners. That's ESL Pro League champions. I'm rubbing that part in, obviously. Like, they're the ones who have the opinion there. But no, basically, I've realized this as well. I should also just go back to the zingers, because that's my world. That's what I'm the best at. So I did have a pretty good one then, which is when he tried coming at me like that. Because in that game, if you didn't see the final, he was doing really well on the first few maps, right? But then one of the problems is when Team Liquid was like in a winning position, he sort of tried to force it a little bit. Like he tried to sort of like on CT side, he did a million pushes, like on Dust 2, and that sort of cost him a little bit. There was a few times where, again, because he's a young player, hasn't been in big finals, he probably was thinking, fuck, this is my chance to win the trophy. And you're playing against a team that in theory is better than you. So you try and win when you can, right? But as a result, he did sort of like, he went a little bit too aggro. So my joke on Twitter was, if you look at his tweet, it's like, I guess he just had one more ill-timed defensive push that had ruined his career in his bank or something. You know, like, what? I've always got it on deck. You have to understand, boys, any moment.
It's not going to happen. All right. Well, I mean, that was just one thing, a little bit of a drive-by that's going by where I was like, oh, that's funny. I mean, I guess, you know, petty grievances or whatever, just a quick aside before. Yes. I think, like, I did take a little bit of a stroll down memory lane on stream the other morning because Blizzard released this trailer for Overwatch 2.
Oh, right.
That was so cringe. I couldn't even, I think I lasted maybe 20 seconds into it. And
oh, you mean because the whole theme was sort of like. It was
so painful.
Hope is the one thing keeping life. Like, what? This is a video game. I know it's weird, isn't it? I know.
So we literally went back and watched, you know, like Warcraft 3, you know, trailer. You know, just like, dude, Blizzard are known for like the Diablo trailers.
Yeah, of course.
The most epic fucking trailers, just like setting the bar. And then you got this one where it looks like they went and took a bunch of fucking, what is it? Just stock footage You know, it just like slapped it all together with some weird voiceover about hope. And I was like, what the fuck are these people on right now? This is crazy. They've completely dropped off.
Here's the thing, though, dude. One thing I will say is this. I used to think Richard was exaggerating when he always said that. Like, it's a famous joke that they all say. You know, the joke is like, if something fucked up happens at Blizzard or the stock price drops, it's like, right, this new character has to be gay. That almost is how they do it, right? But the joke is, they're cynically doing it now. Because that commercial also had this really creepy, almost like fucking groomer element to it, where it was like, no one understands you in the real, what your parents don't. But in this game, you can be whoever you want. Like, what are you talking about? It's
You don't have
video
to tell
games.
your parents either. We can keep your secret for you. You know, we don't
So
need to
weird,
release
wasn't it?
information of which character
I
you
know,
pick. You know, like
exactly.
between you and not me. And it's just like
Exactly, yeah. No, we can tell your dad you're Soldier 78. Oh, no, wait, not Soldier. Shit, no, I mean Winston. Whatever, I don't know. Fucking mental in it, I know.
It was peak. It took me a few tries to get through it because it was just like, this isn't a video game trailer, and this is Blizzard. I think that's probably the biggest pain, you know, that's involved with this whole Blizzard fiasco, and just to see the direction that they've decided to go. Because it's like they set the bar growing up. You know, it was like the games, you know, Blizzard, those were the best games, and they did the best trailers, and they just really set the bar. They never released a game early. They always waited until it was right. You know, that was what set them apart from the others. And now to see just how far they've slipped into this degeneracy, it's so tragic. It's so painful. And well, I mean, I don't know. It's like the thing is that you barely have any of the OG left, right? So this is what you get, where they're just running on the fumes. They're running on the fumes of that brand that we all have in our minds when we think of Blizzard. You know, when I went to work with Blizzard for a couple of years to do Overwatch, like, you know, that's the brand that I had in my mind. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go work Blizzard. This is gonna be sick. And then you get there and you're like, what the fuck happened? What is this? Oh, was this it all along? It's like, no, all the people who made Blizzard got pushed out or left. And now you just have the corporate suits that showed up, or basically the people who are there for a paycheck, or, you know, who are actually there because they love Blizzard, but they can't do anything. They can't, it's already too far gone. And so this is the kind of stuff that you get. And this is just going to be that continued slide into just mediocrity that Blizzard had, that Blizzard's going through, instead of actually, you know, being the game developer that sets the bar. So that was my gripe from this week. That kind of ruined it. I was just like, man, this is brutal to watch.
To me, the problem with all those companies is it's like every intellectual property in the world. It's not just Lord of the Rings and Disney and Star Wars. It's all going that way, guys. What they're trying to do for real, this is why they seeded all those stories for the last 20, 30 years. Like, you know, one day we might use holograms or like CGI to bring back your favorite actors into new roles. It's like, that sounded cool to you because you were thinking, wait, you mean you could do like Sean Connery and like another... No, what they're going to do is it's going to look like Sean Connery, but it's going to be written by like the fucking idiot who wrote How I Met Your Mother or something in it, and it's going to just be some garbage shit version of that. And so that the same thing, I already got ahead of this one, because if people don't know, my beloved Quake, there is no id Software. Like, John Carmack doesn't even work at id Software anymore. They got bought by Bethesda, who was a shit fucking publisher anyway. And now the joke is they're going to keep making Doom and Quake as the years go by, but it's not going to be good, and it's not going to understand esports. It's not going to be anything like that. So it's the same with Blizzard. As you say, all the people who actually worked on those genius games, they've all gone. I mean, as you were saying, there's the Ice Frost people or whatever, or Frost Giant, or whatever the fuck they're called, doing RTS. If people don't know, one of the people I found out through a certain hashtag movement was obviously that guy Grom, or Groms, or whatever his name is, who used to work on World of Warcraft. He was like an original dev. Because that was, to me, a canary in the coal mine. This guy not only left, he then immediately had to speak against Blizzard like 50 times. So it's like, you can just tell the problem is, it isn't even just, it's also it's the creatives, but it's the culture as well. And the culture, let's be real, has taken a ridiculous turn in a certain direction the last 20 years, hasn't it? Like, the joke is, there was in it, but here's the thing, it's also cynical, guys. It's not simply that they did it because they changed as people. It's that because gaming grew more and more and more and more mainstream, it had to become with the values of mainstream culture. It couldn't be. Remember, if gaming was people like me and Semmler, that was it. So whatever shit we were into, roughly, it had to align with us. So gaming in the early days in esports was a South Park type vibe. Now it isn't. Now it has to be sort of like Disney shit and all whack stuff. Like, that is just what we're going to become. So don't expect that part of the industry to turn the corner. Or it'll be just like we're saying, it'll be smaller indie devs and they'll make cool games, and maybe that's the way back.
I think that may be the way back. You know, it's just going to go, it's like, oh, it's just going to go underground, man. But like, that is probably going to be it, where you're going to get your niche fan bases and you're just going to create great games. And maybe you don't have the AAA budget, and maybe the people still keep going, like the majority of gamers out there, because they still love Blizzard or whatever. Still blows my mind about the number of people who are excited about Overwatch 2.
Oh, it's mad, isn't it?
I was like,
Well,
guys,
that's why they
game.
succeeded though, dude, because they
Same
have made
game.
it. It's your identity. It's like, the modern day guy. Look, back in the day, if you don't know, the original people who liked Star Wars was literally Doer. It was people who also are quite cool, nerdy guys. It's just they have like a sort of soft spot for Star Wars. There are people now where the joke is their Star Wars is the prequels and the fucking sequels. And then they're like, I'm the biggest fan ever and I'm loving it. It's like, I can't relate to you whatsoever. You are actually just like, you're like internet spam, mate. Like, can I just get rid of, can I unsubscribe from you being in my life? Get out. Get the fuck out. Because those people where like they can, the ones I can't understand are the ones where, because they have made it like the characters are their friends and family, it doesn't matter how bad it gets, it can never get too bad. They would watch like 10 more Harry Potter movies. They would watch infinite more Star Wars movies. Like somehow those brands will never get bored. Whereas to me, what I realized about all those things is I liked them either when they were good or when they had like the really creative people involved. As soon as you like move those things out and it's just the character, but it's not really the character because now it's written by a shit guy and maybe even the actors did. Like now I just lose interest. Like I don't care about random sequels, mate, but everyone else is into it for some reason. They're still loving it.
Because you can't get enough. I guess you become a fan of the universe or you become a fan of that. But like, it's true. I don't know. Like I've completely gone off of any of them. Like I don't care about any of the new games from the big studios. I don't care about any of the new movies coming out of the new. Like basically, I'm just going back and finding old series. Like
that's the move.
I could watch The Wire forever. So like that's probably what's going to happen. And maybe this is just a part of becoming old.
Yeah.
It's just like you just find the shit that you like, and then that's what you're gonna watch from now on out. And then it's like, hey, I know this is the good shit. This is good, and I'm not wasting my time when I'm watching it.
So, and all classic movies. That's always a great one to go back to, and there's plenty you still haven't seen, or you mean to get to that one. So when you realise all the new stuff's just shite, and it's only like the dopamine hit of like it's new, everyone's talking about it. Once you can get past that, actually, you go back in time.
Isn't that just like the master marketing play now, where it's just like the fear of missing out? Like, oh, don't miss out.
It is.
Like you gotta watch it. It's everybody's talking about it. It's the water cooler thing. You gotta watch it. And you're like, you watch it because you're like, fine, I guess I'll watch it because everybody's talking about it, so I might as well. Okay, fine, I'll do this. And then you're just like, why the fuck did I just waste my 2 hours on that? That's just so I can have that conversation on the internet where I could actually probably now. The beauty of it is now I figured it out because now I've got guys like the Critical Drinker or whatever who will literally just do a whole I don't need to even hate watch this Rings of Power from Amazon because I've got guys out there who are just going to go ahead and hate watch it for me and then give me a little rundown real quick, and it's like, okay, good, I don't need to waste my time. I got like 10 minutes. I figured it all out. Turns out I was right all along anyways, and there we go, moving on.
That's what's ruined it also though, dude, because that's also, here's the other thing that's, if people don't know, obviously this all comes, if you don't know, from the culture of when there was limited TV channels and there was only a few big budget things, and so everyone did watch The Sopranos or insert Breaking Bad, wherever these shows are, everyone was watching, right? But even back then, this is what a fan won't get, because the internet wasn't as ubiquitous and people weren't terminally online, you still had to come up with your own take. The reason why the conversations even around this shit are not worth being part of is people don't do that. What they do is, just like this show, they come to their own source where it's curated and people give you an angle and they just pick like an a la carte menu, like, I'll take Thorin's point here and then Semmler had a good thing here. I think I heard Rich Lewis to this. And then they go to their really normie friend, like, what I think Oscar should do when he leaves Titans, if I'm being honest, because you got to remember he was in Malta, and then they're just using your fucking tape. So half the convos now about these shows, it's just garbage, isn't it? It's just someone going, what I think they're trying to do is sort of reference Trump or something. That's everyone's been saying that for last week, it's what? Like, you're just like the people who go and they get the top Reddit comment, and then they just wait for another thread really similar, and then they just like paraphrase it like, well, I've always thought Axile carried this game like he did last time he played Fizz. Like, yeah, it sounded better when I said it on Twitter, you fucking twat. You know what I mean? Nothing. That was just an example, of course.
Quick aside. They are talking about the Orange Man again now because they literally have nothing good to talk about right now. There is literally not a single thing that they can claim that is good. So they have to bring the Bogeyman back out again and just beat that dead horse, that orange horse, for the fucking millionth time in the past 2 years. It's fun. All right, aside. Let's actually, the thing is that we could actually spend a good bit of time talking about the RMR right now, too, because this is going on live. Oh. And actually, live right now, Evil Geniuses just qualified. Just managed to make it.
Oh, it's not all good news then.
Exactly, though. But like right there, 3-0, Evil Geniuses making it through. That to me is just, so they take Nouns, then they beat Furia, and now they've just taken 9Z in a best of three mapper. That is a huge win, top of the group. There's only 6 teams coming out of the NA side of things, So for Evil Geniuses to snag a top spot, that's bonkers.
I mean, I will say the America's RMR is a bit shit. Like the actual
Well, yeah.
average level
I mean,
of
it
quality is
is.
obviously nowhere near the European ones and that. But even so, yeah. Here's the thing. People went too hard on the EG narrative because they always do this thing that, if you notice, I never do in my work. People do that thing where you just connect, all the rosters back. So, like, people were doing this with, like, Team Liquid earlier this year, dude, where they were like, that's Team Liquid, so of course they'll choke. It's like, some of the players aren't even in that team. They've got a different coach. They've got Yekindar now. Like, what are you talking? Like, why would, like, Elige having been in a choke 4 years ago affect Yekindar and Daps? You know what I mean? So similarly, right, people did that thing. Because if you don't know, I actually, when we were doing the betting show, did actually bet on Eternal Fire to lose to EG, the first best of 3 that EG's won in 500 days or whatever. But here's the thing, it's not really 500 days, is it? Because like Neelan wasn't there, Hext wasn't there. It's a different team. So the key thing to me is this. Look, the original EG players are still very up and down. Like Cirque still looks a bit washed. Breezy has some good games, some games not that great. But the people they brought in, like the Neelan guy's decent. Like I saw him play when he was just in Kazakhstan or whatever. He's not a terrible player. The Hext guy I'm a bit unsure about. I don't really know why he's in a team like EG. You'd think you'd have big names, wouldn't you? But basically what I'm saying is the actual team, and remember they did bring back Malik, and now there's no Stewie to short circuit him. So there are like some positive markers headed up. The key thing for me is like, even at this major, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to be like some big player. So I do think they need to eventually take this and build on it with like real big signings. You got to eventually have some stars.
Worth noting that it was a 16-13 win on Mirage as well, third map. So it wasn't like it was just a dominant thing. I mean, this is them still battling it out across 3 maps with 9Z, who 9Z, not the most experienced roster in their own right either. So that is definitely that was something that's caught me off guard. At least, I mean, I like you could have EG going through, but I had them going through like maybe scrappy 5th or 6th.
Oh, sure.
Managing to get through in the group. To have them top the group, it's good. It's just it's
I mean, like you say, the Furia one's obviously a big scalp.
That was a big win too. Yeah, taking Furia like that. I mean, I didn't necessarily have the most faith in Vorborg and in what he was trying to do. I was just like, this Neelan guy, really? Like, how is this going to work out? Are they going to be able to speak English? International roster, this kind of thing. And yet, it seems like it's coming together in pretty rapid form here. So good on him, man. I mean, gotta eat some crow sometimes. And this is one of the cases where it's like, okay, I definitely did not give enough attention here to this Evil Genius roster when they decided to make those kinds of moves.
My problem with that, though, is that guy's history is with this level of players. It's like semi-unknowns or you gamblers. The problem I have is this, and people might know this. They had the opportunity to have Kassad. They could have even maybe brought a Zeus back if they'd wanted. So my bigger issue is you get those guys if you want to go to the absolute top. This is just getting a functional team again, which is fine for now. But yeah, it's got to be bigger than this. Because it's like basically, this is why I had that whole mild drama about Team Liquid when I said they were overrated when they came runner-up at Pro League. Because it's Team Liquid, guys. Like, if you are certain franchises in sports who still have the money, the LA Lakers, the fucking New York Yankees, it doesn't matter if your team's bad now. Because of who you are, if you actually get things going, you don't just get to be good and then go, well, just stay as like the 6th best. You're supposed to go for the top spot. Remember, TL was a team with that 2019 lineup. They were shooting for everything, dude. They were shooting to be the greatest team ever. Like, they were going for the whole thing, the majors, the Grand Slam, everything. You got to get back to that level. That has to be the end goal. And for my opinion, Evil Geniuses has to be in that mix too. Think of not only the history, but their team, I can say right now, does have money. They are, I mean, people know that because they blew it all in the last lineup, but they have the money to spend. It's more about just get the pieces in place. So hopefully this is the stepping stone where you do now. Maybe after this major, you show a little bit of promise, then you can bring in a big star player and they're even willing to join because you're not a bad team in the server. Yes. Why did I say that? Keep going.
But that...
I'm just going to keep trying to incept that into people's minds.
This Vorborg situation, though, is actually really interesting because, I mean, like, that's his whole thing. When Copenhagen Flames, when everybody was mocking Copenhagen Flames for posting like a €6,000 profit or something last year, it's like, dude, they are operating in a space where teams are burning literal millions a year to just stay afloat, and they're out here operating at a profit. Like, that is amazing. And it's the only way that you can operate in CS is by finding talent, developing talent, and selling that talent to more expensive, more wealthy teams, and then you're able to build up from there. Well, that's what Copenhagen Flames has done, and Vorborg has clearly had a hand in it. So credit where credit's due. Him getting involved with this, maybe he's got that eye, and he's exercising that on Evil Geniuses now with a little bit more of a budget. And like you say, Malik is still there on the analysis side, so he's going to have a little bit more support perhaps on that side of things because Malik is no slouch in that department. He definitely knows how to read CS and how to get that kind of job done. So good on him, mate. This is going to be interesting. But interesting result already right out the bat. We did have O Nation versus Imperial. The head-to-head, it had to happen. Who was meant to be, and O Nation ended up taking that one. So
0-0
Imperial
Nation,
now on
but
the
yeah.
edge. Go for it. What's up?
It's technically 0-0 Nation, like the numbers.
Sure. But it's like, I just hate that name. It's like Ooh Nation. Like what are we going with here? 0-0? Am I gonna have to say 0-0 Nation every time?
By the way, one thing I've never figured out, I just don't know what that logo is. Like, what is that logo? It looks like a black heart has been fractured in two, which is weird because they had all those like players from the. No, never mind.
No, don't talk about that.
Whatever. Because yeah, obviously that was the big matchup, wasn't it?
I mean, the obvious ones that are right now that are doing all right, the obvious ones, Complexity, Liquid, like those are teams that you kind of expected to see do well in this group. At least Complexity, based off their recent performances, was like, okay, now that we've kind of got a little bit more of an idea of what they're capable of. It's looking more positive, and they're actually in a head-to-head match right now with Liquid for that second legend spot. So Complexity all of a sudden doing a pretty decent job of things. And as far as like it seems like, at least as far as NA are concerned, Evil Geniuses are topping instead of taking like 5th to 6th. But right now, it seems like the teams that were expected to kind of be up there in that top 6 are doing that, are in that position. So like, was there any team in particular that you were kind of like looking out for here on the RMR, the American side, before we talk about the EU side?
I mean, you referenced them already. Like, obviously, the thing, if people haven't followed the story, is Imperial, if they lose one more time, don't make the major. Like, look, I've already made all the jokes before. It doesn't make any sense it was the last dance, but then would you keep playing multiple majors? Like, which part of last don't you understand? Like, is it last or is it penultimate or second to last? Like, because there's the other thing. And also, they did change, like, fucking Vinny was never in the original team, and the Cello certainly fucking wasn't. So I already, in my opinion, invalidate the last dance. But let's just make it just a team. It's just Imperial, right? If they don't even make the major, then what is the point in keeping this team going? Like, I know idiots are going to go, they just like spam that buzzer, like marketing. This is a sport of sponsorship, you idiots. You don't make much money selling that. And spoiler, are you ready? I'll just drop another gem for you. I've even heard good old FALLE capital N, Fallen. I've even heard he's such a fucking wanker that part of what he did when he joined this team, remember, the one thing essentially you're doing if you're a team signing a big player like Fallen is like, well, we get all your media rights so we can control. No, I've heard he can just get his own sponsors and has his own merch still, and that's like separate to the org. So you don't even get the marketing push, because think of the others, right? You're going to go, no, there is no fur brand, right? His brand has been good at CS. Fallen's the brand. So to me, the whole thing's just silly. Like, I think at this point, it's actually sad. Like, look, if you made, here's what's fucked up. I'd still rather they made the major. They still at least got some big names, but like, they're not going to do anything if they get there. Like, I even think that people overrated what they did at the last one, but this one, there's no way they can do something if they make this major. CS is way too stacked at the moment, guys. There's too many. There's like, what? I don't even know if they're a top 30 team, mate. Like, they're a fucking mad ropey squad now.
Dude, that's amazing, though. What you just said is, because my argument has always been you either have a brand to build on, which is a platform, YouTube, Twitch, whatever, so you can sell sponsorship there, you have a lot of fans, whatever, or you win tournaments. Like, those are the two paths that you can go down. And obviously winning tournaments is best, but hey, if you still have a brand, you're doing good. But if he's on Imperial and Imperial don't even have the opportunity to sell on him, like, you're not even on the second path there.
I think it's just that he has the option to sort of like short circuit and go his own route, which is just it's a bit mad. If people don't know, that's essentially a conflict of interest, isn't it? The dreaded term. Oh, I've invoked it. Oh, God.
Amazing. I hadn't seen that at all. Okay, that's interesting.
It's because it's not public information. It's just something I heard behind the scenes with the little birds. Because there's the thing the other idiots do. Here's what people like your Kindar don't get. You know what? Because they'll never learn, Semmler. Your Kindar won't know this, so this can be a lesson for the next generation, right? When you talk shit to me and I make it clear in my response, I don't fuck with that. Then here's what happens. All the legit people who are your enemies and who you have fucked over and you have been a dick to, they just come to me. And then they go, yeah, he did that to me, you know. Oh, he said this to me, actually. You know what? You probably don't know when he was actually back in the Latvian scene. And then they all just tell me their little fucking secrets, like I'm Varus or something. And I just collect them all. And I just wait for the right time. And I pick out the little gems. That's why that one on Fall I just said there, I've never revealed that. That was something else that I just kept like from early in the last major. I was just waiting for the right time to drop it. So whatever, just put that little spicy meatball in the soup there. Matzo ball, whatever, I don't know.
Always good to drop one every now and again, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Well, as far as NA RMR, keep an eye on it. Let's talk a bit about the EU RMR, man, because holy moly. FaZe, like, they can't win a game without it going to overtime right now, which is really scary considering the quality of opponent they're playing against. Gamer Legion, Fnatic, Sprout. It's like, dude, these are teams that you should be handily dismantling and just going about your day. This is not a situation where you should be going to triple overtime in your first match of the RMR. So, like, I mean, we might as well just get right into it. Like, what are you thinking of about? Okay. Oh, actually, hold on. I have to actually add something real quick before we talk about FaZe. When it comes to the major coach rules, I went and found the coach rule book because I saw the coaches talking. And I thought that Valve had come down like a ton of bricks and said, yeah, no coaches at all. Like, you got, like, online, on LAN, doesn't matter. You guys don't have, you can have your coaches around, but they can't be involved in any way during the match. And it turns out that that is not the case. So I went and found the rules. In offline tournaments, participants are allowed to have their registered coach behind them during official matches. During the match, the coach will be connected to the voice communication system and will only be allowed to talk to the players during tactical pauses and halftimes. Coaches are not to communicate with, i.e. be seen, heard, or felt by the players by any means at any time, with the exception of warm-up, halftime, and tactical timeouts. But that is still the case that they are still able to communicate during tactical timeouts and at halftime, which I thought that Valve would come down and said, like, we're going Dota route where you guys don't have coaches anymore. That's it. We gave you that chance and fuck off. Now you don't have coaches when you're at the majors. So I kind of have to downgrade my prediction when it comes to FaZe, because I made the prediction that FaZe would have a real ace up their sleeve.
Oh, because they have the edge.
They would have the edge there of not having to rely on a coach that would come in and save them with some insight or with an idea or whatever. You know, it's like they would just be on their own and Kerrigan would be on his own, and that's how they operate. And that's pretty much it. I mean, Roban is there. He's got some insight, but he's not Blade, you know? So I always thought that going into this major, this would be the real shakeup of, like, no coaches. So this is going to change everything. We're really going to see FaZe have an edge, and this is really going to shake things up. But it turns out this is going to be like any other LAN. So I actually have to downgrade my prediction of FaZe, because I really had FaZe having a solid edge going into this tournament, and that was what was going to set them aside, and that's what's going to set them up for the double-double and just, you know, coming into it. But now I feel like they're almost like any other team, and I feel like we're seeing that immediately out the gates because they've had some very close matches already. And I'm a little disappointed actually in Valve. I kind of hoped that they would just atomize everybody and just be like, fuck off. This is it. But, like, what's your take on that situation? The coach decision, because online the coaches are completely persona non grata. They're not allowed to talk with the players at all at any point. So it's like, why have different rule sets? Like, why have one set? To qualify for the event in online format, you can't have any coaches or anything. But when you get to the actual LAN, now you can have coaches. I don't know. Why not be consistent? What do you think about this?
On the coach angle, look, I do think it's a travesty. Like, remember, I'm one of the only people apparently ever in Counter-Strike who I didn't even like when they took away the original coach and things. I really think coaches should be allowed to talk all the time, and it should be akin to, like, I mean, it's not identical in football, because obviously when they don't let the mic go out, it's like players like, but you have the play clock and you can just talk before every single fucking snap of, like, right, we're going to go to this play, or I'm reading this on the day. Because I think that would just bring, remember, people like the tactical, well, they lie and say they do, I like it. The tactical element of the game is very big as well. So I think what not only does that add more, but the cool thing to me, this is what we took away, in my opinion, in the same way as you're saying, if you don't have coaches, someone like Carrigan gets way better. Well, in the same sense, if you don't have coaches as much, people like Glaive get boosted because he's doing what a coach could do as well. But so that's essentially, you flip it the other way. In my opinion, the more you can talk, it would also allow things like someone like a Blade could have been like the leader of a team without a true super mind that was doing stuff. I mean, sort of like what he's done now, but a more extreme version. So I always thought that would have been cool, because then the veterans of the scene would become the coach, and they could bring, like, here's the difference. God B would have, like, the Sprout guys, wouldn't he? And then, like, some fucking legendary Danish guy would have, like, Ave or whatever, would have, like, the heroic guys, and he'd be leading them. And, like, I always thought that would be the next level of CS, but obviously we went away from that. The problem is Valve's gone way too far the other way. Like, obviously, look, we can't ignore this. Coaches were cheating, including in fucking qualifiers for the World Championship, like the RMR, in an egregious manner, where some of them, it's one thing if it was even just a random bug and one of them didn't quite report. No, motherfuckers were triggering it and getting boosts and stuff. As soon as you hear that's going on, then on top of it, no one ever thinks of this angle. Think about what happens. I don't know if you know this, but especially in the UK, judges, they don't just do the, like, movie thing of, like, you're in contempt of court. There's a famous thing in the UK where if the judge, if you get voted voted like it's guilty, right? If the judge also thinks you're being a prick in the court, like you're just being like, show no remorse, maybe even taunt like the victim's family, or he'll just like make sure you get the max sentence. And he'll even tell you while he does it, sort of like essentially the judge equivalent of like, fuck you, pal. You know what? I don't even have to do this, but I'm going to go hard. That's what Valve's doing. And by the way, who can we blame? Think about this. When all the coaches initially got told, some of you have cheated, did they all come forwards? Did they fuck? As you're finding out now, and as you'll never find out on certain cases, especially now that Isak's been proven toothless, there were wave after wave of these coaches. Some of them never even came out. I know a couple of big names that still haven't been brought out because it's like nothing's going to be done with them. And at this point in time, everyone just wants to bury the story. Let's move on. So I can see why Valve went so ham. I just think it cripples Counter-Strike though. Like it sucks to think that someone like Threat or Zonic or whoever else is just sat there like, and there's the worst thing. They have to like do some fucked up like, they're on some like mad like Vipassana thing where they're like, exist in the moment. Do not get excited about what's happening. I can't even react. Like, what are we doing now, guys? Because then people are so scared because of all the fucking cheating that if they're moving at all, they're doing some sort of a hand sign, they're doing a gesture, 3 up, 2 down, they're doing like baseball shit. That's the concern. And the problem is, I would normally be the number one guy trying to fight Valve on this, trying to say it's bullshit, look what you do. But how can I? When you've all betrayed us, almost to a man on some level, people have fucked up. The joke now, I said it at the beginning, but it's become sadly true. At this point, it's quicker to just say the famous coaches that didn't cheat. You know what I mean? You guys did that. You set the precedent. You poisoned the well.
Not done yet. Supposedly,
no, I've heard there's more
out there where there's still a list that's being investigated of coaches. That I mean, it could be even more coaches. Like there is. You could legit speculate right now as to whether or not we're ever going to get the full list because it could deep six the entire scene. Yes. Like all the coaches, it could. You don't know yet. Still, like some of these tier 1 coaches could be involved, and we could lose most of the coaches for the CS:GO scene as a whole.
Right, you ready? I'll give you the FaZe take because here's the thing. It's going to completely disagree with everything you said, but it might also bring you on board and maybe it's ready for a glorious... Because here's what people forget. I don't forget. I'll tell you all quickly a little bit of a preamble. Everyone in the chat now, I'm not reading it, don't worry about you fools. Everyone in the chat, everyone who watches this VOD, if I say Astralis in their era, 2018, I mean, I say it ended in like after kind of 18, 2019. Obviously, some people think it kept going to the next major and Team Liquids was invalid or whatever, right? But if we talk about the Astralis era, you're all going to think to yourself, well, it's their hands down the greatest team ever. They were so dominant. No one ever truly did rival them. They beat every single team in the world ultimately. They did win the majors. They won majors without even losing maps. They dominated the style. They innovated the style. They kept the meta being pushed forwards. They were the best with utility. They had the best across the board. Each one of them was the best in their positions, except maybe Device or something. Right? When you say all that stuff, here's the problem. Almost nobody was saying that until I'm going to say like halfway into their era. Here's what people really did. It took people so long because in esports, people are really slow learners. If I don't even think they do learn, what happens is eventually they just get bonked over the head so many times. It's like eventually they almost just out of like dizziness, just take a different direction. Oh, that works now. So what happens is before they won their first major, this is real. People were saying they're not even going to win the major. Because remember, they lost that Stockholm event to North right before. And everyone was like, see, there's a player break. And they lost it. They were overrated. It's just because FaZe didn't have Olaf Meister. And plus, some other squads were fixing up their lineups. You know what? Yeah, they were really dominant then, but they're not going to win the major. Then when they won the major... Oh, it was too easy. Oh, they didn't have any competition. It's just like Na'Vi and that. This is... It's only because there's not good enough lineups. Then they won the Grand Slam, just kept beating everyone. Then the next year, you had all these other team entries coming along. I tell you, it didn't matter like this. It wasn't until the bitter end that everyone jumped on the bandwagon and was like, I was always here. What do you mean? I was at the... Hey, so who's got my seat at the front? Why am I at the back? And everyone pretends now like it was obvious. Here's the problem. You all have done that with FaZe Clan, but it's a different team and I don't blame you on this one. This one is not... This one I can give you all an out for. This one you have to be a super vet in Counter-Strike to see, because here's the thing. Astralis was just, if you understood tactical Counter-Strike, they were so obviously the greatest team ever because they were, like I said, leading the meta, revolutionizing the meta ahead of everyone. Even if someone caught up for a moment, they would just take them over 2 events later and win everything again. This one's different in this sense, Semmler. FaZe Clan is literally the most unique all-time great team to ever play CSGO, and this is why. I'm being serious. I have never seen a team that was number 1, that is going to be team of the year, that might even win 2 majors, might even win a Grand Slam, might get every accolade, who the joke is, they never dominated the matches to do so. They dominate in the sense they win the championship at the end. They dominate in the sense that, like you're saying here, every game's close, they still win, but they don't do it. Like as you're saying, FaZe can play shit teams and lose a map. FaZe can play like the 11th best team and potentially lose a series or go 3 maps with them. They can get pushed to overtime. But you know what? When you put them in the biggest tournament with the crowd behind them and you put the opponent in that setting and the opponent's feeling the pressure and everyone, that's the moment when, because of the unique setup of their team, they don't have to have it from one guy. Carrigan has been there. By the way, what's great about Carrigan is he's lost so many battles, he can't lose the war because he's not afraid to lose a battle. He's not afraid to like take some attrition and to be down a map and to be beaten because he's been there a million times. He's had his heart broken in fucking Boston Major. He was in TSM where he's supposed to win every one. He never won a single one. He was the guy where I beat you at the small tournament. I can't beat you. So because of that, the thing is now, it's like he's just been through the other side. And now he's on some shit where it's like when you're in the pressure now, he's like some fucking Cenobite out of Hellraiser, like, haha, welcome to my dimension where pleasure becomes pain. Like, that is who he is now. He's the one tormenting all you guys. Exactly. So what I'll say is this. You're all going to say now, FaZe Clan ain't looking like they were before. Because you only remember them at the end of the tournament when they beat the best team and you go, shit, they are the best. They are the top team. I'll say this, go back to the beginning of the year. Here's the detail a lot of people won't know, Semmler. In every single tournament that FaZe Clan won, with the exception of IEM Cologne, they lost at least one match. So at the last major in the group stage, they lost a game. At every other tournament, IEM Katowice, they lost to Navi early on. Then there was another tournament, they lost to another team. Obviously, eventually, there were 2 tournaments they just lost outright. There was IEM Dallas and there was the fucking Blast, right? They always lose, and they always play everyone close. Even if they 2-0, it'll be like 16-14, 16-12. And it's like, even then you go, oh, but it took like that 1v3 from Brokey, and if Twists didn't get those 2... Yeah, but here's the thing, they do consistently do those things. So I think they're the ultimate team of all time to play down to the level of the opponent, but then when you add in the pressure and the things that break other teams, that's when they go to their peak level. So I'm not worried. I will agree, this is the weakest they've probably looked this year. But like you said, they're still 3-0'd. And here's the thing about a team like that. The phase they've been in, pardon the obvious pun there, the phase of their squad that they're in is very weird. Because normally, this is what teams are like after they were dominant. You remember the Fnatic guys? They won like the first major. They were really good even before that. They probably should have won the one against LDLC. The era people remember as the Fnatic era was afterwards when like Cloud9 was supposed to beat them at Pro League, but they just stole it from them. And then you had like TSM rose up and is beating them. But then somehow they come back and they nick that major from Envious. And you're like, how did they do that? And that's what FaZe has been like the whole time. They're never actually like the best on like a random day. It's just on the most important day they are the best. So that's the thing. Here's the challenge I'll make to everyone. If you're all out on FaZe Clan, because I'll still take them to win the major. If you're all out on them, here's what you got to do instead. And no one's doing, which gives the whole game away. You never mention who you're taking instead. Have you ever noticed that? They don't go, well, FaZe isn't looking that good. That's why I'm on the Navi train. FaZe isn't looking that good. Vitality all the way. FaZe isn't looking that good. Team Liquid. No. All you do is go, FaZe isn't dominating, which is true. They're not. But I'll also say that I don't think they were ever this dominant team people think they were. They're going to be the team in history, like I say. Look, they're probably going to go down, if you look at what they've done already, they might go down as like a top 5 team to ever play CSGO. But the difference is the others all just traditionally dominated. They dominate in sort of like a weird intangibles way. So that's why I'll never count this team out until I really know they can't win.
And you make a lot of very good points. I mean, the one thing that I keep thinking about as well is that added difficulty of the fact that they are the first to do it as an international roster as well. So it's not even a national roster speaking the same language or anything. Well, they are speaking the same language, but it's all their second language essentially. I mean, apart from Twist, you know, it's you've got everybody communicating in English as an international roster, which is just amazing.
Along those lines, here's another reason they're totally unique. So every other one of those teams I list off there, think of the greatest teams ever, Semmler. You've got Astralis, right? They had Device. You've got Navi, they had Simple. You've got fucking FaZe Clan before, they had Nico. They got SK, Cold Zero. You got NIP, Get Right. You've got Olaf Meister, Flush, all those guys are flat. Right? Where's the player in this team that's in that category? There's no one. No one. Really. No, like, listen, Twist is really good. He ain't fucking Nico. Like, yeah, Brokey's pretty good. He ain't Flush him, mate. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's so first of all, it's already amazing that they're going for the same. They're shadow boxing those teams without like a super god player who can just like think about what. By the way, Vitality doesn't win that game if Zero's 5% worse against Team Liquid. They have one of those guys who is just like a titan who, like, you know, like in the fucking movie Troy, where they present Achilles as like, he is just like the fucking, it's like in Warcraft, he's like the hero, and then the rest are just the fucking minions, aren't they? Like, if he enters the battlefield, changes it. That's what those guys are like. So already Carrigan's doing it on Nightmare mode, mate. He doesn't have one of those guys. He didn't even have Nico like he used to back in the day. So that already means you can't dominate all the time because you don't have the one guy to lean on. Then think about how the rest of the year went. When they bombed out at Dallas right after the major, go look at Twist's stats there. Yeah, he wasn't very good. You know what? Rain has had 2 or 3 big tournaments, and they were the biggest, and the other ones he's chill. He's just back to a normal support. So the thing about their team is you also see these ups and downs with the players, because the thing I think is so amazing, I've always said it this way, but it just fits. They do it by committee.
Yeah. The one point that you made there in terms of like them showing up when they need to, it's always stood out for certain players on here as well. And Rain is specifically one of them who forever, even during like the COVID phase, I was like, dude, don't, like, everybody was getting down on him in terms of like, oh, he's so shit online. It's like, yeah, he's not an online player. He's always the best when he's on land, and he's even better. He hits another gear when he's on the stage, when it's crunch time, and you can get him into a playoff scenario. That's when that guy comes alive. And then you specifically get him onto like Nuke, and then that's his playground. And then that's the guy who's going to win you the tournament. That's the guy who's going to get it all done for you. And it's like, it's fine. It's figuring out how to get those guys, those win conditions in these matches. That's what makes Kerrigan so freaking good. And I mean, what I'm curious about, and hopefully Kerrigan or somebody like Innershine Kerrigan, you know, it's like somebody, maybe when they retire or something, or Kerrigan's going to talk about it, or if a team change ever happens, like just what was the system between him and Innershine and him and Roban, and like how did they come up with these game plans? How did they come up with this stuff? Like what was the combination there? Because it is just crazy. Like Kerrigan, I mean, so the follow up on this is the obvious question of like, is he the greatest of all time in terms of leaders, in terms of IGLs, playing the game on hard mode, not having a star to fall back on, not, you know, doing it in a second language, always playing it close, but somehow finding a way. Like, is it Kerrigan who makes up for the fact that they don't have a star? Is it Kerrigan? Like, is it his mind that's making up for the fact that they don't have an Olaf, like a peak Olafmeister or something like that?
I think so, because to me, like, the key thing about him is this. It's just on the accomplishments page that Glaive's clearly ahead of him, and that he has to catch up to the people in more majors and more time. But if you look at just raw body of work, it's a bit like before Simple won the major and before he get like all this acclaim. He'd already put an incredible body of work into like amount of games played, amount of opponents he's beaten, how many years you stay at the top. Because Kerrigan's longevity is fucking crazy. And then also, obviously, the key selling point with him that no one can fuck with is it's not even like there's other great leaders that have had like 2 amazing lineups. This guy's had so many, it's ridiculous at this point in time. The joke is he even had the one that Glaive eventually got. That was just like one of his side projects at this point in history. Like, that's an afterthought. I know, exactly. Like, you fucking wifed her. You know, I mean, listen, you got some majors out there, but at this point, she's fucking Kim Kardashian your ass, isn't she? So hasn't worked out too well. No, it's fucking mental, isn't it? So I do think if you want to talk about, like, if you want to sell his like unique qualities, no one can match him. It's just, if you want to talk about every factor combined, obviously some people just have the rings, don't they? So hopefully that's why, in my opinion, I hope just the next year or two he gets another major, he gets a few things here, and then we can just it'll just make it even enough. It can just be preference. And if you like Messi, you can have Messi, and if I like Ronaldo, I can have Ronaldo, and if this guy likes Pele, he can have Pele, and then we'll just do it like that. And then if you like Mbappe, you're just wrong. Whatever.
Well, there you go.
Just a football reference there. Just throw it in for the kids, you know.
Yep, there you go. Just in passing.
I'll just take a pause in this particular episode of Revenge by the Numbers to remind people to quickly go to the Esports Bet Discord if you haven't done this. Message the mod mail and say Thorin or Insight and Esports sent you, and you will get credited in your account, one-time only offer, 50,000 DJT, their proprietary cryptocurrency, which will allow you to enter the World's Prediction Series 2 competition, a 10 million USDT prize pool tournament with up to hundreds of thousands for first place. You're basically like a prediction competition, and people were starting off with 1K up to 5K with past bonuses. You get to start with 50K, you get a nice big head start, and then see if you can blue shell these morphos, right?
Was there any, as far as the RMR is concerned now, the other team that has actually made it through, and that just happened right now, is NIP, taking it 2-1 over Gambit. And I was taking a quick glance at the stats. I mean, bonkers, but Axile, not his dominant form, nowhere near the top of the board for Cloud9. So clearly something was off in terms of his game plan, like how he wanted to approach NIP. And then NIP, Hampus, Broline, and Rez, man. Hampus, Broline, and Rez just popping off, and all of a sudden you got S-Attack and Alexi B. It's like they don't even need to do the heavy lifting if those guys are hitting hard. And sure enough, Hampus, Broline, and Rez, the trio, just popping off for NIP. So NIP have had a successful campaign now. They've qualified as legends. They beat Astralis. They beat Bad News Eagles, and now they've beaten Cloud9 in their best of 3. Like that is interesting to see that Alexi B in such a short period of time can get comfortable and then actually get results with these guys. Or how much of this? Okay, because that's the obvious. The first thing you think of is how much of this is Alexi B and how much of this is just. It's just the three, Brawl and Hampus and Rez just getting to be unleashed and play. And Hampus is not having to worry about calling. He can just focus on fragging. He can focus on getting aggressive and making plays. Rez, same thing. Brawl and same. Like, how much of this do you think is Alexi B and how much of this is just like a honeymoon period for the team where it's not friction? There's no friction yet.
This is every team Alexi B's ever been in. They all get really good. ENCE was one of the best teams in the world in major finals, was beat Astralis. OG became like 6th best team, where when you look back at that roster, what a fucking genius Alexi B must be. Their best player was Valde, for fuck's sake. Like, he had him number 6 in the world. Then you go afterwards to G2. Right, everyone acts like he was trash in G2 and Huxley's amazing. Right, all Huxley did is get semi-finals at a pro league. And he has JKS. Alexi B didn't have JKS. He had Jax, who, by the way, have you noticed everyone falling over themselves to sign? Oh, no one signed Jax. No one gives a fuck about Jax. He's back to the French scene. So Alexi B had a harder set of players, a less experienced Monacy, and he still had him in the Katowice final. He still had him at least relevant. They didn't do that much beyond that. So basically, I think people at the moment are too in love with the Huxley one. That's the honeymoon phase. Let's see how it goes. It's a better lineup, so I think it can work. But we have to wait and see on that one. Probably have to wait for Monacy to develop a little bit more. They need to figure out the map pool still. They need to actually get a final or win a tournament before I give them like top stays. So I think Alexi B is just one of the most criminally underrated fucking IGLs of all time. It's why part of me does look down on Nico a little bit. They couldn't make it work. Like, I'm sick and tired, I told you, of these stories of like, just doesn't work with that guy. It's like, have you ever tried compromising? Have you ever tried actually going to an IGL that is mustard? Sadly, he doesn't think any of them are. And just going, you know what, maybe I just don't get your system. What can I do to make your system work better? Is there a player in this team that's a bit out of place? And until we replace him, I can take up some of the slack. I can maybe do something, and that makes me and you together go to the top. Instead, I get the feeling Nico's just like, wait, he thinks like, he must be on the Suey 2K train where he thinks that like the coach is your butler and just comes in and go like, oh, well, very well done, sir. Can I get you another schnapps? Like, shut the fuck up, mate. So all I'll say is that, again, Alexi B's gone to a NIP team that, remember, before Alexi B came, I actually made loads of fucking money on esports bet because these guys were just bombing that pro league. I even took Fnatic and Spirit to beat them, for fuck's sake. And it happened. They were shit in that tournament. And one thing, if you go back on past episodes of Richard, I have always said on this show, is Hampus actually, as an individual player, is one of the revelations of the last few years in Swedish Counter-Strike. That style, he's like a better version of what Art was on fucking Furia before he fell off. Like, he does have some mad lurk timings on CT side. He can be a really clever and shrewd and sort of like tricksy player on T side. The problem was making him an IGL was just a waste of his skills. Just like it's a waste to have Blame F be the IGL. So what do you know? You bring in a legit IGL who has a system. NIP's a team that comes from being coached by Threat. They want tactics. And then you say to Hampus, you're free to just be the really brilliant, unique player you are now. That's sick. If people don't know, I know why those guys goes off. That happened in my career. I'm going to do a video about this, but one of the cool things in my career was I went from being the editor-in-chief of SK Gaming, one of the biggest gaming websites in the world. And the only reason I did that, just like why Richard was the editor-in-chief of Cadrid, is because back then there was so little money in the scene. The only way you could get good, livable money was to take on a bunch of responsibilities you don't want to do. So I never wanted to edit someone else's work or find other talents or have to put in like literally thousands of hours of manual entering data scores on matches into a database. I didn't want to do that, but it's the only way I could make the money to then give me as a side gig a chance to do my articles. So what happened was when I worked with a team called Team Acer, it was the one, if you remember in StarCraft, like MMA and fucking Nurtio and a bunch of these cool players. When I worked with this team, I had this awesome guy while getting into this video one day who was just this German businessman who worked for the franchise of Ace or whatever in esports. And what he found was, because I started to do the grilled interviews, which is basically what Reflections came, if people don't know, these long form interviews where I'd go really deep on someone's past and I'd research things they said. When he saw that those were just blowing up in terms of hits, as in one video like that could get our whole YouTube channel's hits in a single video, and I could go to an event and do 7 of them. And he saw the vision. He was like, wait a minute. Why is this guy my editor-in-chief? Like, why am I having him work with like a bunch of low-level writers in esports that aren't as famous as him on like a news post about our FIFA team? Why is he doing dog's body work? If I could just send him to the event and tell him, just do that. So he actually came to me and said, I get it. What you need is you don't want to give up the money. But basically, he said, you're doing like almost like an office manager job now. He said, I'll just get some other guy to do that. I'll bring a manager guy in and he'll just work the little news writers. And he said, what I'll do with you is you're going to be the creative. You're going to be the fucking artist. I'm going to send you to the event and you just interview whoever you want. And this is not a joke. That is what basically... Before I came to OnGamers, before I did my YouTube channel, that is what started turning the corner from like, I could do really cool, like on the side, like article thing. That gave me the freedom to actually go, I'm just going to go full strength into like the best interviews, the best content. And so that's what happens if you are a Hampus, a Blame F, and you get the chain taken off. Before that, you think to yourself, that's why I'm in the team and I've got to be the RGL and then a really good player. When you realize, wait a minute, if I could just bring in a guy to do the part that's really hard and I can just play, now I can be a genius. Now I can be a brilliant player. And you look at their squad always had the riflers. They always had talent. They're obviously still lacking an AWPer. That's something you've got to figure out at some point in time. But you with Alexi B and those three riflers, we're cooking with gas now, boys. And actually, yeah, this is a team that has real potential, in my opinion.
The question is still whether or not Rez is going to be the guy who stays on AWP, or are they going to be able to find another AWP to replace him? Right, because that's the.
No, they've gone international. Just get one, innit?
Yeah,
just get one at this point.
Exactly. If you're going to be international, that's a good point. I mean, Oscar's on the move all of a sudden, apparently. So that could be something. It could be an interesting play. Maybe.
I mean, I'm sure all the people immediately will just rush to type like they all do, like literal Pavlovian dogs. Like, Oscar, isn't he really weird? Yeah, he's really weird the way he fucks people up from Czech Republic. What are you talking about, you idiot? Like, just take the rough with the smooth, as Nico probably says. And pushes the By the way, just because I may as well share it here because I don't like to waste all the fire on watch parties. I thought my joke was pretty good, which was, then they put together that shitty little makeshift crowd at Pro League where it was just like a bunch of like dining, like ballroom seats. And then like, they weren't, here's how mad it is. They weren't even full. Even that would be half full, these ballroom seats. Like when they did that, my joke was, mate, it looks like they have less people in the fucking crowd than Nico's probably had in bed. In one sitting, obviously. There you go. There's the dunk.
There it is. I heard some stories, dude. That's so funny though. Like that whole setup from Pro League. I mean, well, the thing is, like, it is just ESL having to min max as much as possible. Like it's very clear that they're looking, because they're not in Malta because they like the sun, guys. They're there because they're getting heavily subsidized by the government in some way. The board of tourism, something over there right now is saying, okay, we want to involve gaming on this island. We want to make this a new thing. And so we're going to sponsor, we're going to subsidize, we're going to pay you to run your event here. And so ESL, it's very clear that they're doing everything they can to cut corners, to cut back.
Remember, you know a detail a lot of fans don't seem to understand on Reddit. They still can't comprehend this. Everyone was complaining, what's happened to the sound quality? Why are there all these production problems? Because ESL has a load of people in Katowice. They're not just in Malta only. Remember, ESL's shit before would be like, they'd be in Germany and they'd all be there. It'd be like the home turf, the home studio, everything perfect. That's how you do the event if you want to get the highest production value. That's what Blast does, etc. So ESL, absolutely. I've heard basically behind the scenes, by the way, that like literally they don't even have some of the same staff doing Pro League. Because again, people don't want to go and live for a month in fucking Poland. So it's making it more limited. And they're doing it, yeah, as you say, to crush the margins, to just get it even further down. Probably even, I'd imagine, since they were selling the brand on, to show like the new buyers, like, look, it's not as expensive as it used to be. Like, we can do something quite similar with this, and the fans are still okay with it. So, yeah, unfortunately, like, this isn't the best era of ESL right now.
How to put that through? I mean, the best era of ESL. I mean, it may very well be the best era though, because if they do actually manage to turn it around and make it something profitable, where it's like they can find those margins and bring us back to reality again instead of burning money left, right, and center and overspending on everything to sell an image, right? But then everybody's complaining in the back end saying, "Oh, but we can't make any money," because it's like you're out there trying to sell some image, so you're overspending on everything. I don't know. Like in a way, this may be that step towards a sustainable ESL. If they are going to have a monopoly, they might as well figure out how to actually make it work, rather than the whole thing falls apart because they're not making any money. They don't know how to make any money, and we're all going to be screwed out of a league, right?
Thing is, though, you say the line right there. If you're playing the game of Monopoly, as long as you're the banker, go look up the rules. There is a rule in the game Monopoly that says, what if the bank runs out of money? And it says the bank can't run out of money, because when the bank runs out of money, it can get pieces of paper, it can issue new money. So what you need to know is this: as long as you have a faucet of unlimited money, I don't know, maybe someone who's got a very influential position in fucking OPEC. That would probably help, wouldn't it? You know, just a tad. So all I'm going to say is that I saw a tweet today that I did retweet, where basically a guy who's sort of like a gaming guy, it's that Razor Fist guy, you might know him, and his comment, because obviously he's seeing esports as like a tangential thing he's sort of looking in at from the next lagoon over. He was like, oh, esports is 80% money laundering. It's like, look, you're not wrong. That is the quiet part said out loud that people don't know about esports. But spoiler, and this is the true black pill, unless you know to get the fuck out of the mainstream like I do. If you ever look into the wider world, I used to complain about a lot of things in esports, to complain like, why is it like this? Why does it change? I only complain now to let people know it's like this. Here's the sad news for you guys. You know what I just said about the like what esports mainly is and how the mechanism, how it operates? That's the whole business world as far as I can tell. Now you're going to go, what an exaggeration. Then don't pick up the breadcrumb. You don't want bread today. If you go and look into it, a lot of the world runs that way as far as I can tell, mate. A lot of it's dodgy shit like that. So the problem I have is like, essentially in a fucked up way, actually suggests esports is like now being mainstreamed. It is becoming what the rest of the world is. It's just scaling up a similar model to how the rest of the world runs. So at the moment, we're doing the sports washing thing. That's what we're doing right now. But eventually, this will also be where people come to do things with their money and to just like to have complementary businesses where you take money from this one and transfer it to this one, then transfer it back to this one, and you make a big chain to make it all fucking complicated. Funnily enough, that was a thing, if you don't know, 10 years ago or so, that was esports already was getting into. There's a famous story, which I don't know how much he references now, but he had to actually kill because they were legally threatening him, where Richard basically revealed that a bunch of different really rich, potentially evil people, literally people out of like a fucking Johnny Quest like villain character of a cartoon or something, some of the most cartoonishly evil people ever, were just using esports for this purpose. And the joke is, he was so on the nose about it, they did use all of their political and financial pressure to crush him, and he had to actually just delete the story off the internet. Otherwise, they would have ruined his life. Because again, that's also how the world runs. You know, when you guys go, why doesn't some hero journalist just, because they're all dead, you idiot. You don't get to know about that guy because you're like, it's a shame this guy didn't become a good journalist. Just his car just exploded one day for no reason. Yeah, exactly. That's not for no reason, you idiot. There's a very good reason why his car exploded. And it wasn't because he accidentally put sugar in the gas tank, was it? Like, so anyway, basically, yeah, that's going to be another thing about esports. So to me, you're going to have the weird companies like the NCs, maybe Copenhagen Flames, that can run it sort of like an old school business and just be a cool idea, well run, watch the margins, don't go too crazy. But I do think the future for all these other games is either societal control, China, Saudi Arabia, or it will just be, this is another way, because remember, the thing about esports that's so dodgy right now, it's why there's match fixing, it's why there's all the betting, is right now, it's the Wild West, it's the frontier, isn't it? Well, one of the purposes of the frontier, you'll know this from American history, is you go to the frontier if you are the guy who wants to be the outlaw. If you want to fuck around and do things in a way that you wouldn't want to do right back east, where they've got all the police and the government and they can track, you want to be right where it's all lawless, so you can be lawless and reckless. So I think that's a lot of what esports is also going to become now. It's just going to become this area where all the fucks come in and do whatever they need to get done, and we'll just unfortunately be the window dressing, or we're the fucking the distraction in the magician's left hand as he does something in his right.
Yeah, or it's we're going to be the whipping boys.
That was also, by the way, sort of an alley-oop with the Saudi OPEC. Come on, Semmler, let's get this one, mate. Come on, you want to lead into that?
We have a few.
There's a connection. That Na'Vi topic actually connects to this, but maybe you didn't see why. Do you want to do it?
We can get into the Na'Vi one because that's obviously the first one that that comes to mind. I.e., because I mean, there have been several articles recently written about Na'Vi, and Richard's latest article kind of touched on them indirectly a little bit. I mean, pretty directly, never mind. But like it was a big article. There's a lot of topics covered, but he does cover Na'Vi in it. That's his last article of Behind the Iron Curtain, which definitely recommend to all of you guys. It'll be down in the description. I highly recommend you guys take the time to read it because once again, Richard is just dropping bombs and doing a terrific job with it. But there's also different in terms of like who actually ends up owning Na'Vi now these days. That was one of the major stories. Major. I mean, you would think that this would make ruffle some feathers, that people would be interested in it or not. But when one of Navi's major sponsors, which is a betting company, then turns around and actually becomes the owner of Na'Vi, apparently, this is what this article claims, is that that they are owned by Na'Vi, that Na'Vi are owned by was it GGBet?
Who's a long-time sponsor, obviously.
Long-time sponsor, title sponsor, that they then for a year, allegedly, according to this report, they were the title sponsor for a couple of years, and they allow a competing brand to buy the title sponsorship. So 1xBet, I believe it was, they came in, gets that title sponsorship for a year to misdirect your attention, essentially, and to say, hey, we're not actually more involved anymore than we're no longer involved with Na'Vi. Look, if we owned Na'Vi, why would we allow our direct competition to own that title sponsorship? And then all of a sudden now, a year later, they're back to being the title sponsor, and it looks like through a series of Cyprus-owned companies, which again, this is what you're talking about with that string of just obfuscation when it comes to shell company with this company to this company, and this guy is on the board of this company, but it's just like it gets all crazy. But it does seem like allegedly Na'Vi now are owned by a gambling company. And
as you say, where's the uproar? By the way, think about how
that didn't even make it to the top of the Reddit. That didn't
Carlos
even
does a tweet, and it's the end of the world. A betting company owns what was the best team in the world last year that has the greatest player ever, and that's just fine. This is why, by the way, if you are people from Just2 US or HLTV, and you have a big opinion about conflict of interest, it doesn't matter. Don't talk, because you won't call out Na'Vi for that. You won't press that matter until something's done about it. You're just here to be your own journalistic version of the water cooler, where you're just going, but I think this, I think it's not that big a deal because they wouldn't cheat against each other. This is why conflict of interest matters. If you allow a betting company to do this, remember this, Semmler, there was a detail a lot of people will forget that Richard also reported on earlier this year. Do you remember early this year? I think it might even have been at Katowice. It was either Blast Groups or Katowice. There was actually a fucking time where a Na'Vi player, I think it was Electronic, intentionally rigged a prop bet to let a fan win a prop bet with the help of a commentator. What happened was a fan said something along the lines of like, why doesn't anyone use the Negev? Like, the odds are really crazy. Imagine if someone was to buy one in this game, the odds were like crazy as a prop because no one ever buys it, right? And so some commentator, dickhead in the CIS scene, a real famous commentator, not some nobody, it was like the equivalent of if you or Anders was like, hey, you won't believe this on broadcast. Like, let's all get fucking Electronic to do it. And so as fan service, he bought it in the match, thereby creating an insane fucking conflict of interest scenario / he fixed a fucking round or moment in a game. That's, by the way, I don't think people get this. I think Valve should be involved with stuff like that. That's fucked up, dude. Like, that is a form of match fixing. You're not fixing the outcome of the game. You're fixing like a specific bet to let people potentially defraud a betting company. And I think the betting company
makes it impossible to deal with this whole situation now, because now you own the
team as well.
You
exactly.
own the betting platform. Then the ways that you can go about rigging games don't need to be wins and losses of series. Now you can determine wins and losses of rounds. Of maps, like you say, if you buy a weapon, don't even need to use a weapon. It's just maybe like this weapon gets bought in this game. There's all sorts of ways that you can come around this and find ways to make money.
Supposedly that's what they do. Again, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to fucking go to my car and turn the fucking engine and say goodbye. Oh, coincidence again. Like, all you need to know is this. You guys are idiots if you think the way they do betting, like the conception of idiot striker who can't understand any other form of betting and match fixing. They don't really just say to the players in the Lakers, you better lose game 4. That's too obvious. That's too many leaks. What they do is this. The number one style of betting that you manipulate is the spread. All you tell them is this. You can even win or lose. You just have to be by this many points. That just means at the end of the game, make sure you let a 3 in. Make sure you play defense harder. Put 2 in. Get our best free throw shot. You know what I mean? You can do all. There's so many ways. Again, this is why it's not like betting was invented yesterday, guys. It's been going on in sports for so long that people have gotten very sophisticated. And so in esports, the same thing's going to happen and probably is already happening. So yeah, basically, if, as Richard's last article said, well, the one that was about this, that you can't basically stop match fixing. Well, the one thing you can stop is fucking betting companies just directly owning the team and therefore having like a mad conflict of interest. Because if you don't get it, think about what if the betting company had an insane line on Na'Vi, because Navi's the number one team and often has very low odds. But then Na'Vi was in a scenario where if they actually win this match that otherwise doesn't matter, Semmler, maybe it's a Pro League round robin and they've already won 4 games and the last one doesn't matter. You just have them lose and that's how you make back all your money from people who bet on Na'Vi and were winning. That's where Na'Vi, the team, should want to win, but the betting company would have a scenario they want Na'Vi to lose, and you have a conflict of interest. And I don't care that people go, but they wouldn't do it. But wow, Simple's not that kind of. That's irrelevant. That is irrelevant. You can't allow that door to be open. But then the other thing about this story that's mad to me, by the way, is obviously this spins in. If you don't know, Richard's series is an ongoing one, this esports Iron Curtain one. This is, by the way, it's so perfect he's doing this in his last year, because this is going to be one of the fucking gems of his career. This series is already amazing. He's already nailing so many different aspects and verticals within this umbrella of the conflict and how it's affected CIS esports and the wider world. And this newest one right now, this one's obviously related to like the Dota stuff and the fact that they're having this broadcast. It's got another bunch of threads in it that people are going to think are simple, but we can get into it, mate. There's so many areas we can go in on this one.
Okay, like we can just refer directly to Na'Vi right now, which it was the one that really stood out. Let's see. Let me find the specific paragraph again. Okay, right here. All right, so this is an article that talks about from workers to pariahs, and it talks about the particulars between the Ukraine-Russia conflict and how that bleeds into esports. And if you happen to be a Russian working in esports, which, you know, if you follow the CIS region, there's a lot of cross-pollination there between Ukrainians and Russians working together in companies, working together on broadcasts, working together on teams,
everything.
They basically speak the same language apart from some slang. So it's like the language barrier isn't too big to get through. So it's not the end of the world. They can bounce back really quickly. So there's always been this kind of connection in the CIS region. Ukraine, Russia, very, very, close together. And so the major thread through this article is obviously how the Russian esports workers have been treated ever since this conflict kicked off, and how there really does seem to be this ignorance of the stakes that are being played for, especially if you're in Russia, because you have all of these little weasels, these virtue signaling weasels in the West who risk nothing and who can say whatever they want online without fear of repercussion, saying, like, oh, why isn't that the Russians don't act out and protest and whatever. And it's like, well, because there are extremely real consequences for the Russians, where they're talking about years in forced labor camps and forced prison, like the years in prison. You can have incredible consequences for your family. Your families can lose their jobs. Just total disaster if you step out of line in Russia. It is not like it is here in the West. And so already there's this thread going through this article where Richard is really trying to outline this, how, certain Russian workers have really tried to do their best to stay in esports, but even when they do stay in esports, it's very difficult to get paid, because now all of, Swift, the credit cards, all of that sort of stuff has fallen apart. Like all of the companies have stopped doing business in Russia, so just even getting paid can be an issue. And then that's also not that's not even the worst of it.
Na'Vi themselves as a company made a statement that essentially something like they wouldn't be paying anyone who required the money to be sent to Russia or Russian bank, I believe was the statement even.
Yeah. And there's also, there is also multiple cases that's talked about in this article where the money is just withheld because they need to know which side you're on.
Yep.
It's like, so even if you can get paid, you have the
an excuse to steal someone's money. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's all sorts of fucked. But one point that really that ties directly to this Na'Vi situation, because remember, Na'Vi were very outspoken at first. Yep. About how they didn't want to have anybody working in the organization anymore that was that still lived in Russia, because they didn't want any money to go towards the Russian Federation. But it is worth noting, and credit to Richard, he does a great job. And in this moment, in this article, I'll just go ahead and read the paragraph here. So Na'Vi were so determined to have as few Russians associated with the brand as possible that they even removed Russian admins from their Faceit hub. Like, those guys don't even get paid. That's probably volunteers that are just doing it out of passion for your team and your project, and you're yeeting them out. So that's the depths that they're plumbing. But then, following paragraph, yet that consistency seems to have only gone so far, while the 2 Russian players left on their main CSGO roster agreed to relocate in June, and this would be Perfecto and Electronic. According to sources familiar with the situation, that has been on hiatus. The original plan was reputedly for them to head to Serbia, but for multiple reasons, including geopolitical within that country, this has been placed on hold, and so those players are still operating as before, contrary to the express statements of their management. And so this is where, the rubber meets the road, and now it's like it's easy to get rid of, face it admins, face it for your hub, but are you willing to tank your, your team that's currently ranked top 2 in the world right now? And it would appear that you're not. So that's the interesting thing where it's like when it comes to there's always been it depends on how far you want to go with this, but like the region, instead of making generalizations, because you can always make spicy generalizations where it's just like the region has not necessarily always been known for being
a lot of corruption,
straight and narrow, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of corruption.
There's
By the way,
corruption.
on all levels, in esports,
in
there was always a lot of corruption.
In Ukraine.
And politically, there was an enormous amount. That's why certain big guys get their cut.
So that's that. So right now, like that was one takeaway from this article that it really is like, and that's the thing. It's just such a shitty situation because am I saying I want to see one of the best teams in the world broken up over this? Absolutely not. I mean, they've already lost Boomich, through this sort of situation. Now you're talking about self-destructing the entire team at this point. If you're going to lose half of it, Electronic is Blade's protege. I mean, there's just all these things. But at the same time,
now.
Once again, do we ask for consistency? Do we ask for there to be a comment, like a thread through this, where it's just like, okay, this is the stance that you've publicly taken. This is the position that you're on. Are you going to enforce this or not? And it would appear that no. It would appear that is not the case, and that they are not going to go through with it, at least as it stands right now. So once again, the question could be very well, is it the new ownership that's coming in and saying like, listen. We're not about to tank our number one brand. The brand that's like the team was simple that's making this ship float. We're not about to sink that for the sake of virtue signaling, or it could be something else. But I mean, what's your take on this situation? Have you read the article?
Us. Right. First of all, what I would say is this. One of the things I think is so mad is because people, you know what? Again, I fucking called this. You can go back to those episodes in February and March when me and Richard are talking about this topic. And because the story went like this, G2 had Monacy, who literally is, at the time, was a 16-year-old Russian. So they were the ones who rushed to make it very clear, like, look, because we obviously just bought this guy for 600k. Don't worry, guys. He'll maybe, like, obviously he's already in Serbia with the team boot camping because of Nico and that. But don't worry, like, he'll just be able to get, like, some sort of citizenship type thing or green card, whatever, through Serbia, and then he'll be playing. Don't worry, everything's fine. So every little dickhead moron in esports, because none of them understand the law, none of them understand visas, we might get to that later too, they all think this is like just going and buying a stamp from the post office, like, I'll have a first class stamp, please, sir. Thank you. I have now a visa to live in Serbia. Because they acted like it was easy and they heard Monacy might be able to do it. They just went, oh, well, that's simple then. All that they'll do is everyone, Electronic and Dexter and Virtus.pro, they'll all just get Serbian nationality. Right, there we go. They're right back. No, there's no Russians being excluded. Because remember, the thing I warned people about was, if that doesn't happen, one day, this is where I came up with the term that Richard is now using. He's welcome to it. There will be an esports Iron Curtain. And if you are Russian, you will be behind it, or you will have to defect and go and live somewhere else, like Serbia, a country which, due to the Slavic roots and the migration of people, has like historical, actual, basically has ties to Russia and that whole region and those people more so than the area that they're in at the moment. Because obviously they'd traditionally been sort of like almost a Mediterranean area, which is a bit misplaced, isn't it? So basically, in this scenario, I already predicted that might be a problem. Now, since people don't know that and they took it for granted all the way back in February or March that these guys just, tripped over and got visas, they don't even know that this might have been playing behind the scenes. This might be one of the reasons why Simple might have had to take a break. Maybe they're going to have to cut off the team. Think about this for a second. I'm just going to look it up right now. I'm going to quickly just put like last 3 months, LAN. Right, here's a good one for you. So over the last few months, Electronic is like just pretty pedestrian, isn't he? His game's not as good anymore. It looked good in the first tournament he took up as IGL. He's been struggling a bit since then, hasn't he? Well, he's one of the people in this scenario who's on the chopping block. Remember, he's already the one that had the wife that was making liking tweets or fucking retweeting stuff or whatever. Now, as far as I know, I can't remember if she actually said something herself. Maybe she did like a story or something where she put some vague allusion. But basically, you don't think that's going to stress those guys out? You don't think that's in the back of their mind that they're playing maybe for their career?
That his wife was making things public. Ooh. Yeah, because that's the thing. For him, there's one thing being modesty where you're a 16-year-old and you have no ties and no responsibilities and nothing. It's a totally different situation when you have your wife, your kids. Electronic has kids, he has a wife, he has a family. Kids, I don't know about multiple, but I know he has at least one kid, right? Yep. So it's just he's got a family. So then you got the wife's family, you've got all these sorts of things. It gets complicated real fast. You're talking about relocating them outside of their country. I mean, it's a big ask. It's a big ask. So when that sort of stuff came down, started getting announced, this is what we're going to do and all that, I was just that is going to be a level, because there's no going back on that as well.
There's another thing, Semmler. That's why I use that terminology intentionally, defecting. If you leave, by the way, remember right now they're also mobilizing people who are of a certain age to potentially be part of this conflict. There's also a premise where they don't want people leaving.
I think who's kind of regretting that situation right now.
They're trying to block these people. So as a result, right, there's a scenario where one day they do just say, just like the old Iron Curtain, fuck you if you've left. Yeah, you're not even part of us anymore. Now you're some pariah, even within the whole global scene. This also ties into another thing, Semmler, which is this is why you'd hope the Frankie Wards of the world would learn this. You'd hope all the talent who are going to work IEM Rio. Remember all those people, Semmler, who came out and said, oh, I can't be a part of Blast if Neom's involved. And then the people behind Neom just bought ESL. And now the same people are I can't wait to work at IEM Rio with ESL and their partners. Total hypocrites, by the way, right? Those same types of people are now learning the hard way that you don't have luxury beliefs, because guess what? Shit can fuck around, get real, and they stop being luxury. Suddenly you have to actually pay a price, the iron price, to fucking have those beliefs. You have to be willing to get wrecked over them. And most people in esports aren't. And you know what? Navi's the next on the list. Because there was a story I saw today. You know, this is why you don't piss me off, me. I'm too good at what I do. I'll find all the news and stories about Saudi Arabia that you haven't put two and two together and connected. But since Saudi Arabia is ESL at this point in time, I'll directly connect them. That's why, if you notice, Semmler, you want to know one of our little victories. You might not have put this on the scoreboard, but it's on there, my dude. Have you noticed ESL doesn't use that GG for all tag all the time now? They've sort of gone away from that one, because think how much shit I put in that fucking hashtag. That was all real bona fide stuff about how they treat women and what they do to journalists and dissidents and people getting bombed in Yemen. I just put that GG for all tag there, and magically I noticed it all became about ESL Impact. Suddenly the GG for all, which by the way would have been a great tagline for some any key wonk to use, wouldn't it? GG for all, except men, of course, fuck men, but I mean all the people that matter, all the people that matter. So in this scenario, right, there's something we have to tie in. So here's some news I saw today, right? Basically, an American, some sort of politician or something, was commenting on the fact that OPEC, which if people don't know, is what was the term stand for? It stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Companies. And basically, it's a group of 13 member countries. And they're the people who make all the big oil in the world. And then they export it and you buy it from them. And they have a cartel and they control the prices and how much gets produced, right? Well, the number one producer out of that whole group by a massive scale, 2 or 3 times everyone else at least, is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia produces 10 billion barrels a day or something, right? That's million barrels a day. Whereas the next biggest is 4 million or 3 million or 2 million, right? So Saudi Arabia heavily involved with what OPEC does. So the story goes that they have now decided that they will reduce the amount of oil going to the US and places like that, but they'll continue to do all this business with Russia, and there's all these stories where they're going to trade stuff in rubles instead of the dollar and stuff. So they're doing essentially, guys, think about this. They're taking actions as a country that will directly enrich the country of Russia, that will directly hurt the US, which is backing the enemy of Russia in this scenario. And as a result, anyone out there in esports who's made the foolish statement, if you're not willing to live up to it, we won't do anything that contributes to the Russian economy, which then becomes the war economy, which then becomes killing people. So if you really believe that, just like Frankie, when you say there are people who would want to kill my friends, well then later if you work with them, I'm going to say, why do you work with people who kill or want to kill your friends? That's just a logical thing to turn back on you. So if Navi won't pay a staff member because they have a bank in Russia, how are you going to go and play in an ESL tournament, help enrich ESL, which is owned by the Savvy Gaming Group, which is part of the Public Investment Fund, which is directly managed by the leader of Saudi Arabia, who's in charge of all this shit and is benefiting through this oil and helping Russia and hurting the US? How are you going to do that? In that scenario, I didn't make this connection. I think it's very indirect, that you were acting if someone else ever gave $1 over to Russia, like they just put that money into a fucking vending machine and a gun came out and was handed to a soldier. Well, what are you doing? You're helping them buy bombs. You're helping their country succeed. You're even helping the other side have less funds, have less money, be in worse straits. So how can you then turn around and make it like you're a political hero? Because one of the points Richard made in that article, which has been so disappointing to me, is I really thought Simple Speech was going to go down as like some Muhammad Ali moment where you took a stand and it was a righteous stand. You'll be remembered as a hero. You heal the divide. You bring people together. And in a way that only gaming in that moment could have done for a certain class of people in both of these countries, you could potentially actually have had it so it's like, right, this stuff's going on in the world, but the gamers, we're not part of it, and we both agree, we just want peace. Instead, now you're in a scenario where they were already getting told Simple's a traitor. It's one of the reasons I think he's been so depressed this year. People were trying to encourage him. You have to speak out against him. You have to go. People like Electronic, they basically want him to just martyr himself and go to prison. That's as far as I can tell. Because what happens is there's certain people who have resentment. I even get it. If your family was involved, of course you'd be like, what the fuck, stop things now. But they're going to the level where it's like everyone else must throw themselves into the machine as to be a fucking wrench and get chewed up and spat out. And you can't make that demand of someone else. You can only make that demand of yourself and your peoples. So my problem with this whole scenario is, now what is your stance, Navi? What action are you going to take? Because logically, if we can't even let Carlos make tweets because of the harm it might do to a generation of boys that might do something, that might, all these mights, these people are doing these things. It's on record. Every day these stories come out of what they're doing. And this isn't even about the Saudis with women. This is about directly involved in business moves that affect the war effort, that affect the geopolitical situation. So in this scenario, you can't stay silent because you put yourself on front page. You put the spotlight on yourself because you put the spotlight to do your little dance to get all the applaud, didn't you? But now you actually have to pay the piper. And they're not going to, by the way. I'm the only one who brought it up on Twitter. No one cares. Everyone's just going to let this one roll back. No one cared about the betting sponsors. No one really cares. The real problem is this. People just care about drama. They care about spicy stuff that's really easy to palate, little applesauce with a bit of fucking chili pepper in. That's all they want. They don't want like real substance. They don't want meat and potatoes. They don't want actually like get into the topics.
Whatever happens, it's just like it's inconsequential. It's just a little bit of titillation that happens on the daily, and that's what you can get, because there's no there aren't going to be that many people who are actually follow the thread and who are looking for consistency. And so that's the real issue with all of this political grandstanding that's now come into what used to just be about entertainment for the most part. I mean, apart from moments here and there, Muhammad Ali is one of them, right, where it did take on something bigger. I mean, sports was escapism, just like video games used to be escapism, just like, it's just a form of like, okay, I'm tired of dealing with the world right now. I've got all that stuff that's like the real world consequences. Cool. I'm going to sit down on the couch and watch the game. I'm going to disconnect from this for the next 2 to 3 hours, and then I'll be able to come back into the world after I've relaxed. Now the problem is that the world is in the gaming as well, because they've wanted to bring that into it as well, as if like that's the new sport or that's the new form of entertainment is the world. But now that they brought the world into it, like I want to say that it's an issue, except that even in sports it doesn't seem to be. Even in sports it seems like viewership is still there. Even though they're doing all of this grandstanding, I mean, it just drives me up the wall. It's why I don't watch sports anymore. I hardly watch anything. Like I watch niche things, and I even have a problem like ADCC. I just watched ADCC and grappling. Well, it's like ADCC Abu Dhabi, and I'm just like, fuck. Like you can't watch anything now. If that's gonna be like, if you're gonna bring the world into everything now, it's just like, well, you can't. Like, what do you do if you want to get away from this stuff, because now it's all pervasive. It's everywhere.
Then the other angle, let's spin it into the Dota one, because I've got a little take on that.
But set the Dota one,
yeah, set up the story on that.
No, I mean, story one is here where on the Dota side of things. So this is where I kind of got a little bit of information. There was a couple of articles brought up about it, because it's obviously Dota is also a game that has a lot of bleed into the CIS region, a lot of Ukraine, a lot of Russian.
It's enormous there. As far as I know, it's bigger than CS, man. Whenever I went there, it seemed like a way bigger game than CS.
Oh, it's huge. Dota is huge in the CIS region. I mean, you've got mega fans. You got guys like Puppy and Dendy, and like just Dendy is still in the mix, and Havost and like all those guys. Like you got legends that are still in it, and Havost is still part of the broadcast. So I mean, like it's a huge region, but they're also going through their own issues. And one of the big issues that came up recently was the fact that the TI talent announcement got made. And so immediately people start comparing the numbers in terms of like where is it happening? Where is it happening? Because the broadcast is going to be remote. It's not going to be on location in Singapore. It's the broadcast was going to happen in Norway for a portion of it. And because there's multiple languages involved with TI, there's so many people that are involved in this broadcast. You know, Valve had to find multiple locations to house everybody. And so I think the main issue was that now the CIS region broadcast, the CIS language broadcast is now going to happen in Kazakhstan, because apparently Norway has rescinded visas to Russians. And so when the majority of your broadcasting talent is Russian, you're already going to have a problem there. You're not going to be able to get them into Norway to actually take part in the broadcast there. And so somehow Valve, at the last moment, have managed to put together a broadcast over in Kazakhstan. And so it looks like you'll be able to do the CIS region broadcast from Kazakhstan. But then the CIS region broadcast was taking a lot of flack because there are so many Russians working on it. And so again, people
some with a bit of a checkered past on this particular topic.
A lot of it. I mean, those are the broad strokes. Is that, you know, now they're going to be looking at how many. Like, it's so weird. You know, it's like the Stockholm Major. The way that I feel now, it's like the Stockholm Major, where it's just like, well, there's no women on this broadcast, or no people of color or whatever. But so we're gonna start looking at all these things now again, where it's just like, oh, what's this person's background? What's their nationality? What's their race? What's their sex? What's their, you know, should they be on here? Because that's what's happening with this Russian broadcast. Where it's just like, well, you got a lot of Russians on this broadcast. You know, there's a whole lot of Russians here, and it's just like, well, it's the Russian language. I mean, you guys are doing the Cyrillic. You know, it's like the Cyrillic language, right? So I mean, you would have a lot of Russians handling that broadcast, wouldn't you? But I don't know. What's your take on this situation? Because it feels like, once again, we're just going to go down where it's an opportunity again for cheap, easy internet points and good boy pats, and nothing of any real substance.
Well, I actually have a very unique take, and I have some information people probably don't know. Obviously, I won't claim to be an expert on the topic, but this is some things from my own experience and reading that I've found out that'll be very pertinent to this topic that no one probably knows about. So first of all, there are literally people in the Ukrainian side of esports. I've hinted at this on past episodes, especially ones that Richard was on, but Richard himself just overtly says it in this article. I'm just not going to reference their names because I do not think they deserve to be talked about at this point in time due to the things they've done and said. And these are figures who are literally connected with dangerous, violent, far-right extremists who have killed people and done really extreme things. These are directly people in esports saying these things, liking these tweets, putting these messages out on social media, and they are not going to be in any way reprimanded or punished because it is basically they are having a blind eye turned by the regime, as it were, of esports, and because everything's perceived as one side's totally evil, everyone who's from that country, and the other side must be totally innocent, pure, virtuous people. It's just sort of the elephant in the room, and no one wants to talk about it. As I said, it's in Richard's article. You can go read it. But what I will say is this: some of those elements famously even made statements like, "I am going to destroy Russian esports." That was something one of them said publicly. And now, as you say, they're trying to push out Russian broadcasters. They're trying to search. Not only did you do anything, have you ever overtly denounced Putin and the war? They all want that sort of level of things. I mean, you know the reference, but it's like a certain type of show trial that used to exist in the past, and certain people had to applaud a lot and had to sign declarations. It's a bit like that sort of a vibe. And so here's the thing that's really messed up about this, in my opinion. This is another group of people, Semmler, who, when it suits them, are heroes, are painted as people who are martyrs. They're people who they're painting themselves as though in the cyber world, they're taking on this battle. They're part of the war effort. But again, when their pocketbook is threatened, Semmler, they back off, and they don't talk about certain things. So let me get into this a little second. You said it earlier. A lot of people don't know this. So when I first went to Ukraine, the year was 2010, and I went there for one of those arbalete tournaments, which at the time was like an oligarch guy, I think from Kazakhstan, who actually founded Na'Vi. Like, he bankrolled the whole thing, and he was running a whole bunch of tournaments where you'd have Na'Vi, and by the way, Blade played in a team called United, which was made of Russian and Kazakhstani and players from fucking Ukraine. And the whole point was to show like the former Soviet countries could make a super team. And then they had obviously people like Fnatic and SK come from Sweden. And they had all these top teams come to these tournaments, and it became like its own little mini circuit in 2010, 2011. It was a big deal, actually. And when I went there, I didn't know anything about Eastern Europe. I knew almost nothing about the post-Soviet or Soviet countries. I didn't even know what the CIS was. This wasn't even a term we used back then. Back then, if people don't know, Ukrainian esports, in terms of CS, was barely relevant when Na'Vi came around. Russians, they had some good players, but they were never the top teams. They were always more like, they were more equivalent to what like Team Liquid is now. Like, if they had a good run, they could make like a final. Otherwise, they're probably just going to come like 5th to 6th or quarters, and they're not really going to win the tournament, right? So what happened was, when I was at this tournament, I began interviewing the Na'Vi players who became the great winners, right? And one of the main guys who did interviews was Senya, the player who people might know now, is an influencer and played a little bit in CSGO. And he was basically the Ukrainian Zipniks, if you don't know. He's like an amazing support player who was just way better than he should be for like in terms of impact as a support player. And he really rounded out the Na'Vi team. That's why they're one of the most dominant teams ever. And when I would interview this guy, I used basically a technique I used in all my interviews, which is at the end, I would always say something like, could you say something to your fans in your language? But I wouldn't say your language. I would try and say their nationality. So if I talked to a Swedish person, I would say to get right, or say something to your fans, and he'd say something in Swedish, you know. And then when I came to Senya, because I don't know this region, I said to him, and I'd done this in like 3 or 4 interviews with him, I said, and at the end, can you just say something in Ukrainian to your fans? And what's funny is, the first couple of times, he sort of looked a bit like, and then started speaking Russian, right? And I didn't know it. I don't know what Ukrainian Russian is. I had no idea. I remember at that point, Russian is totally alien to my age. I didn't even know, like a lot of people, why his name was Senya. It's because it's not actually Latin letters. Those are Cyrillic letters, which are Russian ones. So the C is an S. The fucking H is an N. So if you know these things, right, then I didn't know why that guy's called Divorced. His name should be Xbox, shouldn't it? But no, the X is like a K, and then the B is a V, and then the C is an S, and so it's Divorced, right? So if you know these things, I didn't know that. So, like everyone, by the way. So what happened at the time was, maybe the 3rd time I'd done an interview with this guy, Senya, he just corrected me in the interview and said, well, I'll be speaking in Russian now. And then in Russian said what he's going to say. And I thought, oh, okay. And since at the time, there was, I mean, this is actually in 2010, remember, there wasn't any big conflict or beef or problems. In fact, at the time, I even once wore a Russian hockey jersey from like Dynamo Moscow or some shit like that. And when I wore it, I remember a bunch of Na'Vi Ukrainian players being like, hey, fucking sick jersey, man. Because they just thought like, oh, this is all, we're all like one region. This is cool. We've got a shared history. And so what happened was, everyone now, because it's become politicized, Semmler, is spinning this retconned narrative that nobody in Ukraine speaks Russian. In Ukraine, they all speak Ukrainian. Now, here's the interesting detail you're going to love as someone who lives in the Scandinavian region. You know, no one understands the order of the languages. I can tell you it goes like this. Norwegians understand Swedes perfectly when they speak. Swedes, in theory, understand almost everything Norwegians say, but they can be a little bit off with some words are slightly different or the accent. But generally, that's why you could have Rain could have played in Fnatic. That would have made sense. Now, technically, Norwegians and Danes speak the same language, but that's only if it was written down. So a Norwegian can understand written down Danish, but if the Dane speaks, his accent is so thick and his pronunciation is so different, he won't understand what he's saying. And so as a result, in this scenario, it's like the Norwegian and the Danish example. Ukrainians basically speak a language, as far as I know, that is very similar to Russian, as you say, with a few tweaks and things different. But the problem is, because the Ukrainians the whole time, some of them have spoken Russian and they've had Russian media, and they once were obviously part of a massive superstate, they all understand. They're like the Norwegians. They understand the Danes, so they understand the Russians. But the Russians, even though it's a similar enough language, famously, they don't. It's why you might have heard some mad things where there's been war crimes, basically, where what happened was someone like said to some guy who they thought was a Russian, actually another Ukrainian, like, say this phrase, and if you didn't say it perfectly, they're like, oh, he's obviously a Russian, he can't say it, and the people were getting attacked over this shit. So basically, they now try to spin it because they're trying to make themselves as distinct as possible and show there's no connection whatsoever, and that's all just some Soviet shit. They're now trying to spin it like we speak Ukrainian only. Well, as far as I know, the Russians don't really know Ukrainian, but most Ukrainians, especially ones in esports, do speak Russian. As you say, the broadcast is Russian. So now let's rewind to all these Ukrainian figures in esports. So we're coming up with these big statements like, we'll destroy Russian esports. You shouldn't even be allowed to get money if you're there. You must decry them. Well, here's the obvious thing to say, like Semmler said before. You know, when you say that, like, there's a lot of Russians on this Russian broadcast, I've got a really weird question. A lot of Ukrainians. Because here's the weird thing. If I was totally against that and I viewed that as like an invader language and that it was evil and that I don't want any conflation of our cultures, do you know what I would have done the day that all this stuff happened? I'd have said, we need a Ukrainian broadcast. You know what? Fuck that. I'm not appearing on their broadcast. I'm not speaking their language. I'm not helping people in their scene get enjoyment and think things are still a laugh and play video games. I'm not going to help their economy, potentially, depending on what's going on with the companies, and help people also. I'm going to go on a broadcast and help some other guy take money back to Russia. I'd go, nah, because remember, in this scenario, I'm putting myself in the position of the hyper-nationalist in esports. So here's where it gets really interesting. You know why they wouldn't do that, Semmler? Because I've just explained it to you. If you went to a Ukrainian-only broadcast, that whole Russian section of fans, who I'm sure make up a massive amount of why the Russian broadcast has been huge in esports, they're gone, mate. And even more so, they'd have their own broadcast, wouldn't they? So notice that's not on the table. Here's what's on the table, Semmler. We take over your broadcast. You all get out, but keep the same language so all the fans stay, but you get out unless you're willing to basically like sort of fuck yourself up. And you're not even going to be on our side. You can just be in no man's land at that point in time. You're fucked with old water. So notice how these big figures, these massive bold voices with the big swinging dicks with flags everywhere, connections to literally people doing evil shit. Why aren't they coming out saying, I don't want to be a part of this? In fact, you know what? I'm only going to speak my language from now on, because their pocketbook would be hurt, because they wouldn't work TI, because there wouldn't be an enormous broadcast, because they'd go back to being just someone from their scene, and they're not willing to do that. So yet again, doesn't matter how reckless people talk online, they don't want to live that in real life. I know a lot of that probably seems like out of nowhere, but this is what's going on behind the scenes, guys.
It's why you need to, like, this grandstanding that keeps being made. It's like you start, it's like the slippery slope. You just keep accelerating down until you wind up in a place where you're not necessarily sure how you got there, and it's not where you wanted to be, but now you're committed. And so there you go. Now you have to start trying to make these kinds of plays, and there's no real thread. There's no principle that's guiding the whole thing. It really is. Well, the principle is, as you say, it's just a pocketbook. So long as the pocketbook gets satisfied, I don't know. I've been making this point a few times now, where it really is just about the pocketbook. And if you really want to boil it down, all of this is just about the pocketbook.
Oh, you know the saddest thing? You must have noticed this, Semmler. I used to try and think I would be like an intellectual and enlightened thinker and think, right, never judge people by ideologies, backgrounds, national. Everyone's a distinct, unique person with their own thought. What I realized is this: take two incredibly cynical lenses and apply them to esports. Sexual marketplace dynamics, and then also literally just profit-seeking behavior. Take those two things and suddenly it's like, all right, it's like having night vision. Oh, I can see them there. I can see them right there. Oh, wait. Oh, that's all you were doing. You were just behaving in that way so that you bet. That's 99% of it's explained when you do that, sadly. I know it sounds cynical, but it just is.
You can apply it to everything now. Like, it's not even just esports. It's just everything. Sure. Everything that's been happening in these past couple of years is just fucking wild. Like, when you just think about it, it's like you have companies that are motivated by profit and that absolutely have to find more profit year on year for their investors. So just think about that. Can they allow opportunities for profit to slip away? Or if with government compulsion, can they make more money? And as soon as you start looking at it that way, where it's just like, no, it's just corporations that need to find profit year on year, and everything is about profit. It's not about humans. It's not about human beings or souls or the value or any of that sort of thing. It's just about how can I make more money each year on year. Everything becomes so much simpler. Everything becomes so much more clear. And it's just, but then you get called a cynic. Then you get called, it's like, oh, that's very cynical of you. It's like, or do you not believe in anything? It's like, no, it's not that I don't believe in anything. I definitely believe in anything. That's why I'm able to see it. But these people, definitely, they only believe in the one thing, and that's the almighty greenback. So,
Ruble, maybe in this case. But
yeah, ruble in this case. Well, the ruble is doing pretty well, isn't it?
By the way, that's even why I'll even in this moment extend a small olive branch. I'll still go in on Simple for the stupid shit he said about me. I think some of the things he's implied about me are utterly disgraceful, and bearing in mind how little he does know about me and the things he does actually know I have been involved with behind the scenes in his career and other people's careers. But even so, I'll give him a small pass in the sense that, like, actually, he has been a very legit figure in this regard. He hasn't come out and said the slogans people wanted him to say. He hasn't put the things on his social media. He's even taken flack from his own people and his own like friends and people like that in esports who were figures who before were all kissing his ass too when he was just the GOAT last year and there was none of these problems. And I have to say, this guy's actually been under enormous stress and pressure and being torn at from all sides. And I can only imagine the toll that must be taken on your mind. So in that regard, like, I do give him a little bit of leeway this year. It's not a full get out of jail free card, but I'll give him some leeway. He's obviously in a scenario where he has other things on his mind than just CS and esports.
Yeah, that is it adds a different layer when he's complaining about fame in some of those tweets where it's just like, yeah, if
Yes,
you're like
exactly.
in esports, sure, but if you're taking into context everything else that's happening outside of esports, and yes, he is very famous, he is very wealthy, he's got a lot of connections, he's got a lot of let's say we could even say responsibility in that sense, whether he wants it or not. People are going to look to him, and so yeah, no, it's like I'm on the same ship as you in this sort of sense where it's just like it is sad to see how things have panned out, but at the same time, he's not in an easy place. So it's brutal. It's brutal. All right, what else we got here before? So we moved. Let's see, because I did have a thread.
If you want to get it light, there's an obvious one about a certain rat king that we could bring up. That'll sort of lighten the mood. Exactly.
Okay, cool. This was that.
One.
That's why. Yeah. Okay. So I have this. Let's see here. Russian talent and the CIS. It's just such a shame to see it ripping apart because it really is that. I mean, that whole Russian region. It's
CIS region.
Sorry.
CIS region.
Sure, the CIS region, but like the Russian broadcast, the CIS.
Oh,
broadcast.
Sure.
It goes from like Russian broadcast to no, this is the CIS broadcast, and now it's like what are we going to wind up with? Where's this train going to arrive? Like which station is it going to right now? But yeah, these are some of the things that guys. Of course, if you want to look at some of the articles or some of the references, we'll have all of those in the description for you. So be sure to check that out. And all right, let's move on to. We have a couple. One is we a quick one to just touch on is just Smooya being Smooya, where and this is just like as an aside as an interview with Aunkere right now, and it was a good interview, well worth the read. It was lots of interesting takeaways from it, and not just the Smooya thing, but he does address the fact that Smooya apparently
handle
was
the website though.
Cuff.
You know, the website is that one, blix.gg, which is pretty new. The problem is I can't handle it because it just reminds me of that South Park stuff like, oh, Hans Briggs, oh, you're breaking my balls. Yeah. Remember that, like, Kim Jong-il guy on the Team America World Police? You know, like, oh, Hans Briggs, oh. Because that was like the guy, if you remember, who was like the UN, like, inspector for, like, chemical, weapons of mass. You remember that reference? That's a fucking banger.
Reference and a half.
I know.
Dude,
anyway, it's on blix.gg if you want to see this.
It's on blix.gg. Aunkere Smooya is inadequate, is inadequate dude. But so I mean basically Aunkere, this is Aunkere, if you want to think of it like this is Aunkere's side of the story when it comes to the benched heroes. They submitted requests for visas and a couple of them got denied. And Smooya came out and said that Aunkere had made a request for a long-term visa instead of a short-term just business visa. And Aunkere in this interview just says that that's not the case, that he followed everything, all the rules. He went through an agent whose job it is to secure visas, and, he went through, and he just got denied. And when he asked the agent just says, sometimes that's just the way it goes, bad luck, and, try again, but not enough time, right? And so it's just one of those things where, like, Smooya apparently says this on stream, so false information, essentially, just jumps on it without messaging, without asking, just says it on stream, like, oh, yeah, this, that, and other happened. And then afterwards, to Smooya's credit, does apologize and does text asking for the information and does come and does try to walk it back. But this isn't before, obviously the whole community runs with it a mile. What is it? A lie gets around the world twice before, the truth puts its pants on. There you go, right? Like just Smooya doing Smooya things. It was just a little thing. The one that I really wanted to talk about, though.
I want to talk about this topic, though.
Okay, if you want.
Yeah, I want to jump in. So first of all, this is technically an article on like cybersport.ru. That's why if you notice in the interview on Blix, it's in those like the things I use for the beak face, the greater than sign. It's in those types of parentheses, right? Because that means it's being translated from, I assume, Russian in this case, right? And when they've done that, obviously, one of the problems when you translate it from languages that are very different, like Chinese, Russian, is it obviously butchers like what you're saying. So as a result, I doubt really, like in English, you would translate it as like Smooya is inadequate dude, because that sounds like some fucking thing where like Dead Fox was like, I play the most despicable positions. It's like, you mean just bad spots, like really hard spots in the game. So obviously, like that should be a fucking emote in itself, like inadequate dude. It's just Smooya all ratty cheeks, like because because that's just who Smooya is when he's on stream. And then secondly, obviously, this makes perfect sense. Smooya, by the way, I don't even know if he's actually just really stupid or if he's just a complete chav. Because the problem with him is he seems like it's a bit of both. Like, if you don't know, when Richard did like an interview with him, I think he told some mad anecdote, like one of the things when he was in Big Clan that made him like alienated from the Germans. Are you ready, Semmler? You're going to think he was raised by wolves now, mate. Was that he didn't understand how to eat dinner with a knife and fork. Like, excuse me? What were you doing? Was it like a fucking trough and then the fucking thing? And then it's like fucking back to the game. Oh, simple, man. What are you doing? Like, so, and then he's just fucking popping off about this shit. So yeah, you know what? If you can't eat with a knife and fork, I'd imagine you might not understand the intricacies of fucking applying for visas from a country you've never been applying for a visa from. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't talk about that. But my problem is this: you gave him credit there. I'm taking that credit back from this motherfucker. I'm foreclosing on this cocksucker. Because here's the problem: you don't get credit, Smooya. Because this isn't the first, second, third. This is the millionth time this guy's done this. This is just what he does. This is just who Smooya is. He is a fucking rat. He's even worse, because it's one thing if you're a rat, like you're just a piece of shit. He's like the rat that does the rat behavior, but then also doesn't want the consequences of being known as a rat. So then he comes to you privately. He's done this a whole bunch of times. You don't think it's just Richard he came to and apologized. He's apologized to me drunk at after parties in real life. He's apologized to me in DMs. He's come on shows. But then what happens is this, right? After he's gotten a little bit of like, oh, now they don't hate me as much. Oh, now I've got a little bit of community goodwill back. He then just throws it right back in your face, and he'll go on a broadcast and be like, oh, fuck you. What do you know about the game? And he'll do some mad thing. Oh, I've heard about this, and get someone in all sorts of trouble. So when he does all this shit, right, I hate that, because think about what this guy said here. He goes, he just started, he didn't study the situation, didn't ask what happened. He just started expressing his thoughts on the stream. A day later, he messaged me, apologized, and asked for details. And then here's what Smooya said to him. He was just attracting attention. It was funny and unprofessional. He's even admitting, oh, I just used you for clout, mate. I just farmed you. Your life situation, by the way, this is the first time I'm ever hearing about this player. The first thing I'm going to hear from Smooya is a fucking imbecile, totally incompetent, didn't even know what he's doing. And every other org's going to go, well, maybe don't bring that guy in. He's a fucking idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. It doesn't matter that later, after you've started the forest fire, Semmler, you go out and you chuck like a bucket of water in its direction. Like, well, there you go. Well, all's well that ends well, except for when I'm going to keep playing in teams in Europe and being famous, and you're never going to play ever again because you're a fucking nobody. So I think I can't tolerate this. I said it to Richard before. I don't care that he apologised to Richard in a way where, as far as I know, he connected with Richard on the fact that we're all from like a working class background and we all had it hard and we didn't like have the silver spoon. That's true. We do come from a different world than the Frankie Wards of the world and the James Bardolphs. But in this particular scenario, I do think it's fucked up that this guy gets to like rehabilitate his personality because he's that doesn't seem as bad. Spoiler, gets kicked from every fucking team. All his past teammates always seem to either say nothing or to me just tell him, fucking dickhead, I'm glad he's gone. Doesn't matter how good he was in their squad. And then he's now doing this shitty influencer streamer behaviour over and over and over and over again. But you guys love him, like Lobachenia, the guy who told fucking Mimi from G2 that he like asked if she could deep throat a fucking dick or something mental like that openly on his Twitter. And dickheads to this day, Semmler, don't know that. And they come to me and Richard and go, you guys ruined Loba's career for no reason when he is just a cool guy on stream, because they're fucking idiots. So I'm sick of this like shit attention-seeking behaviour where you know you're out of pocket, you know you're way past anything approaching a line, but then you always think you can just come crawling back like, sorry guys, I guess I fucked up. Well, here's my question. What actual punishment, aside from getting kicked from his team, does Smooya ever get? What negative consequences to his life when he lies about someone, when he talks shit on someone? Because even worse, I hate people, by the way. This is why I blocked Simple. People don't get this. You think I couldn't have left Simple unblocked? And eventually, like every other motherfucking rat, he would DM me one day and go, let's just forget about that thing before. Maybe I was a bit upset that day, but I still respect who you are. Privately, they all do that. So I didn't want him to be able to do that, Semmler. I wanted to block him so he had no way to contact me. I even removed him off Instagram so he can't DM me there. I wanted it to be that if he ever apologised, he'd have to back channel, and that'd prove that he needed to speak to me. And all I would tell him through the back channel is, make a public apology and say that you lied about what you said, and then potentially we can start again. And I know he won't do that. So I'm burning the ships to take the continent, mate. I know that is not going to happen. So similarly, in this scenario, like, I hate the fact that the smooyas of the world always come privately and apologize. They always have this fucking conscience suddenly appear when it's at a bar and there's no one seeing it. It's not when they were bad-mouthing you in front of the world. It's not when they've just wrecked your whole reputation. It's not when they've implied you're the idiot that doesn't know anything about the world. Meanwhile, they're going like, oh, how do I chop? My knife isn't very sharp. Waitress, like, yeah, that's a spoon, sir. Spoon? That's not a spoon. That's a knife. Like, he thinks he's in the fucking Simpsons or something. That's a pretty good reference for like 25 years ago. Whatever. There we go. That's the end of my smoothie rant. Whatever.
I see you played knifey spoony before.
And he goes, no, I haven't. That's my problem. Is that best of 3 or something?
The rats abound. The rats abound. It's just fun to see that it continues to be this way, and that at least Aunkere is not going to take any guff, and he just gets right in on it. So I like that. Good on him.
It's hilarious.
And hopefully, we'll see more from him, obviously, going forward. But the other big bit of news that I wanted to get to real quick is the according to Jackson.gg, who again have a pretty good track record, don't really have any fuck ups to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And so they've been following this NIP story and keeping on top of this NIP transfer story. And so apparently, guys, well, we are one step closer. I'm not going to say that we're done because there's not been a deal signed.
I can't handle this edging session. My dick's chafing now. Please, either stop and let the blood flow away, or can I just come, please? Like, how I've been being edged since like last year. It was around the Stockholm Major. The rumor was like, I've heard Devices buying a house in Copenhagen again. So then it started, oh, maybe he joins Astralis because Astralis isn't that good. And then this year we have the whole thing of like, well, he's going quiet for a bit because he needs to get his mental health together. Then we have this story like, I heard this thing like Valde and Device join Astralis. That was looking bad for a while because Valde's gone, hasn't it? I've heard basically because they didn't want to pay for him. So then you get now, a few months ago, Device in talks again with Astralis. Then it comes along, now there's another bidder though, it's a bidding war. Now it comes along, and here's the price finally. Please just sign the fucking contract. I can't handle this, mate. This suspense has gone too far, innit, mate? This is mental. Like, the build-up is so insane on this one, innit? Come on.
They're just getting clicks off of this at this point. You know what? I bet you it doesn't even come through like, and the reports have fallen through, negotiations fall through, and we still don't know. So we're going to be able to write another 10 articles on this. Device, apparently a buyout has been agreed on, a price has been agreed on, and Device is now only negotiating with Astralis over terms. So we can't say that it's done, but they've agreed on a buyout, which apparently is around 600,000 euros. So that would mean that we're pretty much. So if you guys remember,
almost
it was around 700. It was claimed initially that it was a $1 million buyout from NIP to Astralis to get Device. But then when we saw the Astralis financials, because they're a public company, they took a look at that and said, it's probably closer to $700,000 because we see this sum here for 700,000. This is probably it. And so this would mean that NIP are actually going to take the hit in the end. Because NIP apparently had a buyout request for $1 million. That definitely was never going to happen. So they're down to around 600,000 buyout, which means that they're gonna take around 400,000 in the teeth, aren't they? Because you had NIP, you had Device's salary, you had all the costs involved with having Device for this period of time as well. And so originally I thought, NIP are going to be trying to get as much as possible out of this deal, so that it's just not a thing. They don't need to think about Device. Device never happened. It's not in the books, and it's not in the game. Whatever Device, that whole thing, Device. Who is that?
I mean, I think he could agree with them, right? That whatever happens in Sweden should stay in Sweden. I think that's the one thing they can both agree upon, right? There you go. You got it. There you go. You got it. It's all good.
So now you got this situation where it's looking like Astralis are going to take a hit. Or no, NIP are going to take a hit, and Astralis are going to make out like bandits in this case because they'll have made a profit on this, or at least a small profit, whatever. But they're going to be able to get Device back by the looks of things. So I mean, I've
got a couple of angles for you on this one. Mainly they're just jokes, but I'll get them off like their real analysis because let's be real. I've just revealed. I've almost pulled back. I've almost pulled back the curtain there. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah, put that back up there. So here's the thing. There's two jokes I've got / analysis. I mean, two pieces of analysis. One would be this. Astralis isn't even good in legal edges. Now they're trying to play daughter, do fucking buybacks in the middle of a team fight. They're losing. Like, I don't know about that, Semmler. There's one joke for you.
Not bad.
You have to know daughter to know that one right there. And then secondly, here's the other one, which goes like this. What was the angle on this one? Oh, I've got it. The other day, because he might be coming back, people reposted a piece of classic content from last year, which, by the way, I won't say the company is the rival betting company, although funnily enough, they've apparently just dropped people like NIP and whatnot. There's a famous betting company that makes loads of content that everyone might know, and they had a classic series, didn't they, called Pro or Law? And this was the one where they have the pro, and they obscure the names of the players in the clip, and it's either a pro player or it's like a noob player who's not one. And the idea is, who can really tell? Because, by the way, they do a good job on it. Like, they'll find like a really insane clip of like a bunch of one taps. So like you might think that's a pro, but then what happens is, this is what's interesting. The other pros, because what made that content not as cool as it could have been, unfortunately, is all that content of like, remember, watch this clip. Who do you think it is? If you know how pros did it, they just did it by, do they remember that clip? Like, oh, it's a Cold Zero clip. Or even worse, they'd be like, well, actually, the way like he positions on short means it's rain. Or they'd go like, well, because of his skin, so I guess it's actually maybe like James because of the ARP skin, which actually made it not a cool thing, because you want them to know, do you know the clip, not do you know the fucking ARP skin? So basically what they did on Pro or Law to make it funny, like I say, is they made it a bit harder, and obviously you have to know, well, Device had his own methodology, if you ever watch it, where he gets it, I'll spoil it, 100% right. He gets every pro and every law, because what he did very cleverly, actually, by the way, is a mega insight. I knew this already, into who Device is. You know, I've always stressed that angle that we heard about in 2017, where Device actually was looking at not only heat maps of where he played, so he could make like new routes that no one would be able to guess, but then he also would know where the opposing AWPer, like a Fallen, like a Simple, wanted to be, and he would use that to his advantage, because he's always, obviously, if he sets his shot up, he's one of the best AWPers ever. He's one of those guys, he can hit every shot, right? But he's not the guy who's going to snap like Simple halfway across the screen. He has to know where you are and then set it all up and get his angles and get his flashes. So here's the thing that people don't know. Device is a mega cerebral player. One of the smart, along with Get Right, one of the smartest, like high-level pros I've ever met, because they are the guys who can watch a demo and break it down. They have a very strong understanding. So when he does this Pro or Law, what makes it really cool, Semmler, is all Device does is use all the information you see on screen except the kills to figure out if it's Pro or Law. So what'll happen is there'll be a clip where a guy does a bunch of insane headshots and Device goes, it is a nice clip, but you can tell it's Law because there wasn't enough flashbangs used by the terrorist team. And also, why did that guy just jump out of house in that way? A pro would never do that. And then also, if you notice, the way he like backed off showed that his jump, like a pro wouldn't really jump that way. And he gets every clip right. Well, my joke is this. What they should do is do that segment now, but don't tell Device this. And then the joke is he has to view 5 different players and he plays Pro or Law. And he says, this one, it's a really sick lurker, actually. Fuck, like the way he plays this, there's no way that could actually be like an amateur, because the thing is, his understanding of awareness and push and pull, that's probably Pro. This one, I mean, it's a nice attempt. Like I can see what he was going for in the clutch. That aim, it ain't a pro standard though. That's got to be low, right? Then he goes like, oh, this guy, look, he seems like he's a decent enough AWPer. He's hitting the future. The joke is at the end when they go like, right, Device, here's what you scored. You actually scored only 2 correct ones. You said these ones are pros and you got these ones wrong. It was just your Astralis teammates. Now, there you go. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. I turned something into nothing there. Or the other way around. You decide. Decent effort, but a build up, you know. Sort of like a Device going back to Astralis. It's like,
basically, I think I see the joke. The joke reflects reality. There's a greater truth in it. So Astralis are. Do you think it's just Farlig, poor Farlig? I mean,
no.
Do you reckon they get rid of him or no?
The config story from last week. It's implied config's out because of that fight.
Yeah, so they bring him in, and then Farlig goes to a rifle role.
That's the part that sucks. Everyone wanted the move to be just Farlig for Device, and then we're cooking with gas, right? Then we've got a decent team. If they kick config, by the way, config, I told you, I think as an entry, he did a lot for that team. Device is really good, but what's Farley going to do? Maybe the Farley guy goes out and the Mr. guy who's in now stays in instead of Farley. I don't know what way you do it, right? But the problem is, it wasn't like that sexy to have Device and config and blame F. Like, if we have to get rid of config, I think that will kill the deal. So I really hope they aren't kicking config because of this, and that he is just going to get the heel up and all that. Like, I've heard behind the scenes, it isn't quite as simple as it seems in the public story. It's just not my story to tell, so I'm not going to tell it. But I certainly don't think config's someone you should necessarily just toss aside. I think he's not, put it this way, he's not the same hothead he was a few years ago. I think he does understand and reflect on what's happened, and he was probably a bit hasty with how he addressed the fucking Jackson people, but that's for him to tell the story of if he wants to. I hope they can keep him in the team, because if you do keep a team that is Glaive, blame F, Device, Config. Look, I don't know about Zipnix, but those four, that could be a really good team, mate. That's a team that can challenge for a lot. So I hope there's somewhere to fix this. Because if it is just like, good news, Device is back, spoiler, Config's out, no, that is going to suck, isn't it? It's going to be like something good here, but something bad. And you're going to feel again, like, is Astralis ever going to be a really world-class team? Because they never quite made it there, have they? They've never really taken that state since.
Yeah, that is always going to be the forever issue. It really does feel like it's like a curse or something going on where they just can't ever seem to get things to align again. Ever since the roster started to fall through, bringing it back, we'll find out. I mean, you
have to understand, guys. Semmler had he's coming in a bit of a cold. He's a bit beat up today. So I was like, all right, here's the thing. Just pass me the ball. I'm going through my fucking legs, dancing on motherfuckers.
You're
one-on-one,
fucking nailing it right now.
Fadeaways,
I'm like
everything. I just pulled the headset out. Don't need it. Don't need to listen to you. I'll just keep talking. Everything I say is brilliant. You're just a fucking guy who used to talk with Anders and go, Anders, that is human reactions. And he's like, no, Semmler, inhuman reactions. No, whatever. Keep going. Anyway, I'll plug it in.
Basically. All right, should we just do questions then? I can save this point for another. I can save this last point for next week, actually.
We'll make a longer one next week, guys, when Semmler's recovered his voice and that.
Okay. This because it was just the last one was regarding Pro League and Blast, and actually we just did some
it's all good.
It was fun.
It's all good.
Okay. So then let's go ahead and answer some questions then from the GROGcoin questions. So again, guys, GROGcoin. If you're a GROGcoin holder, you get to ask questions each week for the show. If you want to get involved on that, be sure to hop on the Discord. There's all the information necessary. And if you hold GROGcoin, it supports the show. So thank you very much for that. Big appreciation. Okay, let's go ahead and just harp right into them then. So, architect of Korean esports-based Joe, do you think in the future teams will eventually figure out a way to implement 6+ player rosters? Maybe map specialists like Flamey who only play Mirage and Nuke.
What do you think?
I don't think so. I think that it's always that there's too much going on in terms of like team play, communication, comms, everything, staying sharp. Like, I don't think that as it's set up right now in CS:GO, let's say as it's set up right now in CS:GO with the money involved, I don't think that you want to have 6 or 7 or 8 man rosters. I think you want to have your 5-man roster that you keep building. You build the team, you build everything around that, because you don't know. There's no guarantee. The whole idea that you would have map specialists. Well, it's like, what happens if your opponent vetoes that map? Like, well, then that guy's shit out of luck, I guess. You're not going to use him. He's just going to sit on the bench the entire time. So what if your great rival, like their worst map, their best, like they are going to veto the map that you need to use this guy on every time. So he's just never going to play. Like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it makes enough sense for it right now. I feel like really right now the way that it is that it's the 5 players. And to be fair, there's also the angle to consider that Valve themselves are completely against having.
They don't want it. You're not allowed it in the major. They've said you're not allowed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, why are you going to it? Like, we're already existing in this space where, like, I legit went into this major thinking that was going to be it. There would be no coaches involved during the matches. I thought that was the state of affairs. It turns out that's not the case, and that coaches are able to communicate with the players during timeouts and halftime at the major on LAN. But I thought that we were going into a world where Valve were like, right, we let you guys have fun. We've already nixed your 6 to 7 man roster thing. We don't want that. We want the 5-man roster. And we allowed you to have coaches for a while, but turns out you guys can't be trusted with that sort of thing. So we're going to take that away as well. And we are going to go back to that 5-man roster. So if you're going in like the long haul kind of situation, I feel like you have to just focus on the game that Valve has set up, which is 5 players. And you have the coach, but don't make it so that you're completely dependent on the coach either. Make it so that you are as dependent on those 5 players as possible, because it could very well be that Valve decide tomorrow that that's it. It's only the 5 players and you got nothing else. So I don't think that it's going to happen anytime soon. I think it would be silly, or it would be like something super situational, like we specifically want to win this tournament because we need the Grand Slam or something like that. I don't know what kind of scenario that could work in. But like maybe you just need to win Cologne so you can get the Grand Slam, and so you bring a 6th player in who's like the star on loan. I don't even know. What do you think about this one?
I think it's basically functionally impossible, as you say, with the way the current setup of the circuit is. Like, you go to a tournament and for a week, you are playing different opponents you can't always know in advance. And also, they could, as you say, if it's in the middle of the map pool, just potentially like veto a map out that you needed to use that guy on. And spoiler, if he was actually your best player, he wouldn't be the 6th man. So he's always going to be situational. So it's probably not your best map. It's probably like another map, like your 4th best map, which means it'll be in the second round of rotation vetoes, and they'll just veto it and they won't play it. So yeah, that doesn't work. And then secondly, me the other reason it wouldn't work is, imagine it goes up, ideally, this guy gets really good on Mirage. Well, he drops 40 on Mirage, but then next map's Inferno. What, you're subbing him out, are you? The guy just dropped 40, he's carrying the game. Well, how could you? You'd look like a fool. So yeah, it wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to get any, they'd have too much ring rust because they'd barely be playing. And basically, the only time it's ever been done successfully, in my opinion, was Nevera in Vitality. I don't give a fuck about the Bubsky thing. That was nonsense. It was just bait to sell him, basically. The Nevera one, even then, was a different scenario. In my opinion, what they were doing with Nevera was he was way too green, and behind the scenes, I heard he was a bit of an arse and a bit arrogant, and they just wanted to not commit to him fully and wreck the whole team, but they knew where they needed a bit more firepower to go with Ewu, if you remember. So they sort of brought him in on some maps, they were testing him, and it worked the first few months really well. Then it got less and less, it got diminishing returns, and eventually he left. They didn't go with it because obviously this decision by Valve came through, and he went to Valorant instead. He plays for Team Liquid, or at least he did at one point in time. I think he still does. So basically, what I would say is this. I think he was maybe leaving to like some bigger team, though, like maybe a K-Corp or some shit like that, from what I heard. So basically, I think they only ever did that, like I say, as a transition move to move from one guy who isn't quite good enough but is a real team member to a guy who's like a bit of a hothead. You tested him out and you don't want to commit you just yet. And as you saw, they didn't end up committing. So I don't think it can ever work as a real prospect. The only way it could work is if you went to a format, because this has happened in Korean esports. In StarCraft Brood War and StarCraft 2, they used to have a team league format. It was called Pro League. And obviously it's still one-on-one. I mean, they used to in the old days have 2v2, but it's just one-on-one matches. But the idea is, it's like, I'm trying to think what sport this would even be like. I guess they did this in MMA once, team leagues like this. It's almost like winner stays on type scenario in certain rounds. Like if someone beats you, they just keep playing until you send out different people from the bench to play them. Or in normal Pro League rounds, what you would do is you'd only be able to field someone once, except if it was the Game 7 ace match. So what you would do is this, Semmler. You might have a guy who's your like 8th best player on your team. So he'd never be like the main starter just playing a random game. But you'll specifically tell him, right, here's the thing. None of our best players can beat Jaedong or some like amazing Korean player. And he's a god. But on this one map, actually, if they field him, this is a bit of a tricky map. So you're only going to practice that map against Zerg. And what I'm going to do is this. If I get the right angle, it was literally called sniping them. It's like stream sniping. It's like, I'm prepared for what you're going to do. If they send him out on this map, they're going to think, I'm going to send out Bisu, my like Protoss player. But no, I've got a different guy who's only been practicing for Jaedong on that map. And he comes out, and every now and then it was quite a good approach. You can get like a free win off that guy where you've got some unusual build he hasn't prepared for. You scouted everything he's going to do, and it would work. So if you had it like that, if it was like the old Pro League where you knew in advance what maps you're going to play like a week before, and it was like Pro League where you just turn up on the day and you play like, let's say you play one map a day, now you could do it. Now you could have a guy who's just amazing on Mirage, and he comes in and plays B Connector or whatever, and he's just so good he can do that one map on that one day, and it's enough. But that's not the way Counter-Strike is right now, and that's, if anything, going away from the way the Counter-Strike circuit works. We don't have the LEC in a big circuit like that where you play this one on this day, this on the next. We play these things where you might play 10 series at a bit of LAN, and you might play 3 and be eliminated. So I agree. Right now, it's just functionally like, it wouldn't be feasible. I think it would be a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah. Actually, I always love those kinds of stories though, where that whole Brood War sort of scenario sounds so sick.
Oh, it's mega
hype. All right, BZ. There have been extensive talks about how a team that is behind the scenes dead always tends to play better and completely fearless. Is there any equivalent you could draw to better explain this phenomenon and why it exists? I think the obvious is just the pressure is released when you have no expectations around you. Then you can just frag out and have fun. And if you win, you win. If you don't, you don't. No expectations. And that taking that pressure away from certain players really changes their game, revitalizes their game, and unlocks them, because maybe they are their own worst enemy. And so, because they're kind of stuck in that scenario where it's like the pressure's crushing them and they can't quite hit the shot, and the next time they miss the shot, if you take all of that out and just say like, listen, go out there and do your thing, that totally works for some players, and that's usually why you see like honeymoon phases as a thing as well, because maybe expectations aren't super high, and so you can have players just running in, fragging out, having a good time because the pressure isn't there yet. So it goes both ways, not like dead behind the scenes or freshly baked, freshly born. It can work out that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's obvious. Like, he wants some sort of analogy or reference. So I'll give you a couple. There's an obvious one. The real Last Dance. That's what they did in the Chicago Bulls. They were like, look, we know it can't go on beyond this year, so enjoy it, and let's just be in the moment, do our best to win and try and leave on a high. So in that scenario, it doesn't matter if we have any sorts of beefs or beefs with the org, like Scotty Pippen did. Let's just do it one last year. The other one I would be, if you just want a reference to obviously some fucking sci-fi, fantasy, Helm's Deep in fucking the Twin Towers. The premise is you don't know you can win. You think you're being mobbed by all these fucking Hurricane orcs and you're going to die. So it's like, right, let's just go out on our shields, isn't it? At this point in time, we're not going to win. So we may as well just give one last valiant effort, one last ride of the Rohim or whatever when they went out to that like fucking storm gate to come behind them and try and like heroically do. Because remember, that's now you don't always know that Gandalf's coming, do you? Spoilers for the Lord of the Rings, but if you haven't seen it, fuck you.
I mean, go watch the original movies. Go read the books. Better yet, read the books. Tolkien's a god. Okay. I'm actually having to Google this next one because I don't understand the reference. Butt Pounder 420. Is there a CSGO equivalent of 28-3?
Right, I know the reference. It's in the 2016 Super Bowl. It's where the Falcons were leading 28-3 over the Patriots, and then they never scored again, and the Patriots came back and won the game. So what he means is, was there anyone who was ever, well, the obvious one is FaZe Clan against Cloud9 in the Boston Major. Everyone forgets this. They were up like 13-7 or something, and they lost the game in overtime. Like in that scenario, when you're up that much, and by the way, Inferno was an amazing map for FaZe Clan, you just think like, even if we fuck up, we're going to trip over and get over the finish line. Then they were up 15-11. They had 4 map points to win the whole major. And remember, they'd always beaten Cloud9. They beat Cloud9 every time after that with that core. This is a team that's the ultimate one. You're obviously going to win. And remember, if your people, everyone in that team except Olaf Meister Semmler had never won a major. Nico hasn't won a major, but he's been a great player. Carrigan hasn't won a player. He's the only IGL that's great that's never won one at that point in time. Fucking Rain hasn't won one. This amazing player from Norway. Guardians, one of the great players of all time without a major, has been a major fan. So they're all also, when they're at these points in the game, it's starting to get to you. I've heard this in sports, that this really does happen, that when you start to suddenly get that image of like, shit, I'm going to win this. They say it's really hard not to like fuck up the game and just keep going. Because in that, I mean, you just like even think about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Semmler. When you get like a sick position on someone, you start to get a fucking, like a move. That's why they always say the really great people just do it automatically. They don't think it just happens. Because if you start thinking like, shit, I've got him in that's when he wriggles out. That's when his head gets out the guillotine. That's when he, and then the worst thing is the fact that then you do choke because you're like, oh shit, I had him in a good position, and then you get wrecked. It's over at that point in time.
Yeah. That's exactly how it happens, dude. Why am I blanking on this? Can you remember? Wasn't there like a 12-3 comeback from Fnatic at one point in a major?
Oh, you mean the one against Virtus Pro and Inferno at ESL One Cologne 2015? Where like Virtus Pro was up a map on Inferno, they were like leading big. Pronax took the time out, and then Fnatic won all the rounds, won the third map, won the major. They do call me the esports historian for a reason.
Exactly, that's what I was
There was actually a clip one time, technically, by the way, I'm such an anal, petty arsehole. I even know I got the reference wrong. But there was once a clip from, you know, when Anders, like a few years ago, did that streaming, and he asked us all to come on the stream, like me and Richard and Bardolph. And I hadn't played CS for years, mate. I barely played. So I just came on, and on this stream, we were playing, and someone got to that spot where on Dust 2, you know, they call it, it's actually called Gandalf, you know, that spot behind the boxes where you're looking at but I didn't know the call out, right? Because I'm not from the Swedish scene. And at the time, these weren't as ubiquitous names. I was playing like the UK and European scene. So famously in the stream, when we're streaming with Anders, right, a guy was hiding there, and I just go like, oh, he's in that fucking spot where Get Right killed that player. And I say from Fnatic, but it was actually TSM. He's in that spot where he killed that player, and like I am kind of eats at the end of Just 2. And like obviously everyone, like it was a clip on Reddit, like when you're an esports historian but you don't know the call out, because it's like, you know, you can't even barely say that in the time, but my brain was just rushing to get the info, like please, like, and obviously that's like the maddest call out ever, like what the fuck, like Vendetta or someone's like what the fuck, like, you know what I mean? I know. That's who I am, mate. That's who I am.
Yeah.
I'd be like, listen,
Totally
baby,
character. Everything
you gotta keep up my references, because I'm gonna fuck you slow and hard like Smooya did Aunkere. Apply for that long-term visa, you bitch.
That's in my head.
Listen, I can't tell if you're just really loose down there, or that's me squeaking.
Why does he sound like Red Eye?
Well, everyone does. If you haven't noticed, everyone in my story is Bane, Red Eye, or Shocks, or Happy. It used to be Happy, but I changed it to Shocks when Happy became irrelevant. I have to keep the material going somehow.
All right, perfect. Moving on. All right, Snake Gold. What thing aspect makes you happiest in Counter-Strike?
Ooh, what would it be for you? What keeps you going?
Oh. I mean, the obvious one is casting in an arena. I mean, that was always going to be that was always the big one. So that is yeah, that's probably the first thing that comes to mind. I need to find a new one now because I don't think I'm going to be doing that anytime soon. So yeah, casting in the arena, man. It's just like that's the peak, the best. Can't replace it really. So we'll see. What do you think?
Let me think. I think for me, I've actually identified, I think, why I still like CS. Right. One of the things I always loved about Quake, and at the time, CS compared to Quake quite poor in this regard, but now that all the modern esports games are stuff like watered down Dota, aka League of Legends, or fucking actually like bad versions of RTS games or shit like Valorant, which is a bad version of CS. Now CS has become the game where you can actually express your personality and your skill the most of any other game. And one of the things I love about it is, even though it's a team game, it's not a team game in the sense that they like strangle you. Like your team can stop you winning the game, like they have done to Kenny S and Nico and Simple, but they can't stop you being Kenny S, Nico or Simple. In League of Legends and other esports games, they can. Like that shit can actually hold you down. It doesn't matter if you could be the best mid laner in the world. If the rest of your teammates suck, like Chovy showed this like a year ago, and like Handball Esports or 2 years ago or something, like you have no chance to win the game. Whereas if you have Kenny S and Simple at their peak, you always do have some sort of a mad chance to win the game. You can pull off miracles. I just think that's the thing that'll always make it compelling, because just like basketball, a really great player almost cannot be stopped. And then it becomes the whole compelling dynamic of like, how are they still doing this when they know they shouldn't be able to win, and they have to like be 1.5 times better than the opponent to have a chance in this game. That's super compelling, dude. And there'll always be teams that are flawed in their setup, so there'll always be those storylines to me. There'll be the great teams, but then there'll also be the one individual just battling against the world.
Yeah. Okay, next one, Pacey. Have either of you found a vitamin supplement and added it to your stack recently that many wouldn't know about?
He's meaning like, like ashwagandha and those ones that people like thinks like LP, it's like over here a little bit, and Anders is obviously always going on about mini.
Ashwagandha. I've heard actually good things
one.
about ashwagandha. Actually,
a lot of people say that's good.
Inflammation. From what I've heard, there was like some angle I think on testosterone or whatever, but I think that fell through. But I think it's much more about like inflammation, which is why you would take it to help with that. I actually just trimmed it down. I take vitamin D in the morning, vitamin D and zinc fasted in the morning, and then and an antihistamine, anti-allergen, and then in the evening it's very simple. It's cod oil and magnesium. So I'm really straightforward. I was doing some creatine as well, but I just need to pick some up again. Kind of dropped out of that, but I'll probably add it back in again. But that's pretty much it. I keep it really simple. I don't really get too. Oh, right now because it's funny because I'm sick, but right now I'm taking NAC as well in cold season, but
okay.
Not really taking anything apart from that. What do you have going right now?
To embrace the fact that esports is just optics. I'm just on pure synthol all the time. Like these guns say, listen, they're kind of fake, but no, whatever. I'm on blame F shit, mate. Nah. Substance. Blame F's got a lot of substance in this game. The thing is, I just like all the basic big shit. Like you said, magnesium's probably the main one you got to go to. Vitamin D, K3, they're the shit. K2 and D3 rather. They're obviously the classics, aren't they? The only problem with that is I have learned this is where the full spectrum approach. I'm not going to do too much of this, but I'll do a little brief bit. The full spectrum approach they've taken in society of like the plastics and all the fucking estrogens that are in the fucking xenoestrogens, and then the fact that all the crop nutrients have been degraded over time, so you don't even get the same thing from the potato and the banana and all that shit that you used to. So then you think, right, I've got to go to supplements. But the downside of supplements basically is, compared to nothing, it can be good, but it is also also a game of whack-a-mole. So like one of the problems I've heard, for example, is certain vitamins you take, and yeah, they increase that one, but because the body isn't getting it holistically through like a vegetable or something like that, then the body goes, right, well, to make that, I'm going to take copper from elsewhere, and then you're like, no, I'm copper deficient. And then it's like, right, but some copper thing, and well, that just makes your dick small. No, whatever. You know what I mean?
No, yeah,
You're always,
exactly.
so I
Also,
like
it's
you
like you have
say,
to make sure you're taking the right one at the right time because they can overlap on receptors.
there's the other
And so it's
problem.
like if you're taking,
Some of them make it not bioavailable, and then also famously the ones they try to sell you in the shop are the shittest ones for bioavailability. So it does become a science, but like anything, it's like trying to program a computer. It's not, you're not using Windows now, mate, and just clicking on stuff, but in theory you have access to a higher level of manipulation, tweakability, right? But what you've got to learn though is, like you say, you start out doing a few small things, test the waters, then like you say, maybe eventually we even pair back to like, these are just my essentials. I don't need to go too crazy on that. You sort of find the balance, don't you?
yeah, that's basically what you get back down to. So it's like the essentials that you need, and then really, I mean, I find a lot of it is just to do with diet. I eat a lot of eggs.
The best way is to get it through actual food.
Yeah.
Yes.
I eat a lot of eggs. I eat a lot of red meat. And kind of go from there. I'm looking into beef tallow next, to use because I cook a lot in butter, but like I want to try and change it up from that.
I use coconut oil, but yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, there's
another one.
Oil.
Get off all the seed oils if you can, except
get
for
off all the
ones.
seed oils if you can.
Black seed oils apparently okay, but most of them aren't that good. Yeah. Basically, the problem with all this topic is this: people, because they're so used to being a consumer, they're going to go, "That sounds like a lot of work." The alternative is having a fucked body and dying early in a horrible state. You fucking imbecile. So, what alternative is there? Like the point, like everything is, start out slow, do a few things that work for you. By the way, test and verify yourself always. Don't just trust people on the internet. Well, can you tell me exactly what you're taking and doing? Like, why would you do that? I'm not you. You don't know that I have a reason to help you or tell you the right thing. Or maybe I don't know. So like everything, take responsibility for your own life. And this is one of those things you start slow, but it's another journey of a lifetime to get towards proper nutrition and health. And by the way, from the little things I've done, they do have a big impact. They do turn your life around. If you don't realize, one of the reasons I can sort of channel when I'm angry or have passion now, before, if I had like loads of sugar in my diet or I had bad sleep or too much caffeine, I didn't know it was affecting me. I thought, well, I'm just me. It's only a drink, innit? It's like, no, I noticed like that would like emphasize and exaggerate certain things and make me feel, it would make me more on edge and something. I compare that back now and sort of tailor my experience a bit more.
Yeah. I'm with you on board. I'm bored on, like, you just start paying more and more attention, I think. And like, I guess this is part of getting older as well. It's just that you have less margin for error in terms of energy. And so like it used to be that, you could just like sleep 3 hours and still cast 10 hours the next day and not miss a wink, not miss a beat. And now it's like, as you get a bit older, you start to have to like pay closer attention because it's just recovery. It takes longer to recover from things. Before, it's like you'd party all night and do whatever. You wake up the next day, you're fresh. Now it's like it takes you a day to recover in that sort of scenario. So it's just you start paying closer attention to this sort of stuff as well as you get older. That's all. All right. Blaz. How good would you say this current top 10 is compared to others in CSGO history?
Like a monthly question on this show, but okay, we'll do it again.
Well, I mean, I guess
the good news is this: if you actually look at the current top 10, I actually think it's shaping up into a pretty good one now. Now it's starting to look pretty healthy, isn't it? Like, put it this way: if the 10th best team is heroic, and Astralis is in 8th now, that's not bad. And also, we've obviously got a couple of teams like, who knows, Outsiders, Nip, they could get up there. Maybe Ents is going to get a bit better. Like, yeah, I actually think Fnatic's not terrible. They might start to make a move towards like 12th, 13th or something. Yeah, I think now we're starting to get a proper, we've got an elite tier, we've got like pretty good ones at Cloud9 TL could maybe win, G2. Then we've got the next ones that are we're getting, here's the sign of a good top 10 in my opinion. If you go down to teams like 6, 7, 8, and they have a real map pool, they play 4 to 5 maps that are good. That's when you're going to get good Counter-Strike. What I hate is when teams 6, 7, and 8 are like, they're good on 2 maps, so if they get the right opponent, they have a chance. Otherwise, they're just fucked. Like, that's when it's not good. Right now, a bracket completely decides the tournament. It's not who's the best, it's who do you play in what order.
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. Right now, it feels very healthy. Especially, I mean, it bodes well for the major. I mean, going into this major, we can have a totally fire bracket, and it could be one of those scenarios where it's anybody's game. So, definitely looking forward to it. Okay.
Liquid, mad overrated.
IWD, please. Fuck my girlfriend. With Carlos at the wheel, I had faith that G2 would somehow win a major in the next 5 years. However, my brand faith evaporated with his departure. What do you think are the chances G2 wins a major in the next 5 years? And what would you have said the chances were before Carlos left? I think,
okay.
I think that the main issue that G2 are going to have now is that they didn't have somebody like you need to have the authority to make snap decisions, and it always felt like Carlos was the guy who had that authority to say like, no, I'm willing to spend the money, I'm willing to make the play to try and get the roster to actually win something. And so now it may have to be like G2 is run by committee, where you don't have that guy who knows and who can just snap his fingers and make things happen. It may be a committee sort of situation over there. I don't know how much this affects the CS side of things, because I never got the impression that they were as closely tied in on the content side of things as League of Legends is, for example. So I don't know if they're going to notice a big lapse with Carlos not there, if there's going to be a big change as far as like their day to day, like what they do with the team. I don't think that there is going to be that big of a difference for them. So it's probably much more to do with just this, like, do they have anybody with vision over on G2 who can actually make those snap decisions to change the roster if they need to, and try to make plays to get big names onto the team. As it stands right now, I mean, as G2 as a brand, I have zero faith in. Now there's going to be another corporate shell trying to like play it safe to make it safe for investors, when the reality is that the only thing that made them stand out was Carlos. The only thing that stand out was that they were still a brand that actually kind of sort of reflected what esports and the internet used to be before all of these soulless little weasels moved in and started corrupting everything. And so that's the problem now. As far as I just don't give two shits about G2 anymore. They were one of the last holdout Browns where I was like, sweet, this is kind of like reminding me, it's giving me shades of old esports and old internet. So I'm down with G2, cool. But now it's very clear that they're going to go through this this process where they get hollowed out by the parasites, and they're just a shell of their former selves, and they're going to fall, and they'll just be inconsequential because you'll be able to just replace them with any other team and you won't tell the difference because they're all going to be the same shade of corporate gray. So I'm not super jazzed about the future when it comes to G2 and this sort of scenario. What do you think?
To frame it the way he asked, like, will they win a major in the next 5 years, and would they have with Carlos? If Carlos was there, I would look. You can never guarantee anyone wins a major. I told you that with FaZe before this major, like, Na'Vi before that. Majors are just such a crazy, like, black swan moment in the calendar that a lot of mad things happen, as Carrigan found out in the Boston Major. But what I would say is this: if I had to pick like orgs that would win a major in the next 5 years, no matter what lineup they had, G2 would be top 3 always, as long as they had Carlos. Because unlike most other GMs and owners, he is willing to make the most ruthless cuts. This is a guy who kicked Reckless, probably the best marketing piece you could have in Western League of Legends. He was literally like a fucking Gucci like model while he was in G2. He kicked that guy when he was the MVP that year in order to replace him with a rookie because he didn't think he fit the culture. He didn't think he got the G2 mentality. And he didn't think he could win long term with him. So if you're willing to kick Reckless, I've said it on past episodes, I believe Carlos is the only person who might kick Nico if he thought Nico was the thing holding you back, no matter how good you are as a player. Now that he won't, and that he isn't going to, I still think with the core of players they've got and have an Extaz, they can win a major. They'll probably still be a top 5 org to win in the next 5 years. But it's not as guaranteed, because here's the difference. If Nico ever does become a problem, if he ever is an issue, I don't think they ever kick him. In fact, here's my prediction. If they don't win a major in the next few years, Nico does what he did to FaZe Clan, and he just leaves G2, and he goes and joins some other squad and plays with them, and then he just tries a different thing there. So I think basically Extaz is still a great piece to have as a coach. He's showing some good stuff in Vitality. They've got some really good players in the team. Honestly, could obviously become amazing. They've got Nico, they've got Hunter, they've got fucking Jake. Everyone's pretty good, except I don't know about Huxley yet. We'll wait and see on that one. So I think there's so many good pieces. You've got to give them, like, they're one of the better teams. They're one of the teams up there with the odds. But I do think their chances go down. I'd say the chances go down maybe like 30% because no Carlos. Because I really do think behind the scenes, not only did he have the vision, he could also get you in a room and do the deal. He could convince someone to join his team. He had that draw that a lot of people don't. A lot of people just have money or a good lineup, you know.
All right, next one. Oskvaj. What odds would you have given a best of 3 between Team Liquid and G2 if they played at EPL?
Ooh, that's interesting, because in the final, I can tell you, Vitality wasn't like a massive favourite, but they were sort of like in the sort of 1.4, 1.5 range. And I think Liquid was like, I think they were maybe like 2.5, 2.7 or something. So I would say it would probably be quite similar. Like I would maybe put, here's the thing, I think I would put the odds slightly worse for G2. I would maybe have put them like a 1.7 and then Team Liquid like say like the 2.1 or something. Like I think Team Liquid had chances also because of the map pool. But the difference is, I think no matter what you set the line, I actually think people would have bet harder on G2 than Vitality, because you saw I was sort of a bit of an outsider there. Everyone else was raving about G2, whereas I thought Vitality was the better of the two teams. And by the way, what do you know, guys? Some guys just have to be lucky, have all the money, and fuck all the bitches. Well, I guess it just had to be me in this case. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. See what I did there? So no, what I would say is I think the plebs would have bet G2 down to like a 1.2, and then Liquid would have had their same odds anyway. So I would personally set G2 slightly less of a favourite, but they'd still be a favourite over TL in my opinion.
All right, yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar with how the odds would work in terms of like the sports book and how to like balance.
I didn't used to be until I started fucking winning.
Exactly.
Winning. I'm bringing the Charlie Sheen shit back. That's right. Winning.
Shout out to our sponsors. But yeah, no, I would have had G2 over Team Liquid as well. Just on firepower alone, I still think that Modesty, Nico, that combination, Hunter, like it would have been very difficult for Team Liquid to deal with it. But in terms of like actually setting odds, I'm gonna defer to your experience there.
Well, the joke is, Monacy is who fucking NA fans think Orsi is. He's like a young guy who hasn't quite had the chance yet. He's got loads of potential. He does hard carry some series. He's still got lots of time to develop, and he doesn't need to be the best right now. Monacy's not. Orsi's none of these things. He's way old. He's had a few years. He's just up and down and all right. He's from NA, which is why we're all on Copium, and he's not going to become like a truly great AWPer of all time, is he? But whatever.
Is what it is. All right, Zumba. Zumba, I can't unhear the thing Machine does after Semmler pointed it out.
Oh, he's ruined it. It's the part where he keeps talking too slow, like he's got to
drag it out.
He's got to keep on.
And
this is a moment in history for Navi.
Moment in history. Brilliant. It's like William Shatner or something. I don't know. Semmler, what are other things?
Navi are going to BG2, but what were they? You Chad.
There you go, dude.
And the next thing goes like William. Basically, someone edit William Shatner to sound like Machine casting. See if it's put it side by side. See if it's any good.
See if you can do it. That's it. So what are other things? What noticed in other casters?
He wants us to ruin all the other casters as well. All right,
I don't want to do that though.
All right. No, here's the thing. I'll tell you. Here's the one thing I'll tell you that will ruin it for you, because I knew it years ago. But since they won't improve, I will say. I won't say who does it. But here's what you watch, and if you watch this, you'll realize why I was a god on the desk, and some people were very good but never improved. Here's what you have to look for. Look for which analysts always say the same word when they receive the next turn. Everything they say, same word, always starts a sentence. Same sentiment starts it, and then they say what they were going to say anyway. It's just a hold all that they just use to take the thing. Some of them do the same exact one every single desk segment. Once you notice it, it's also going to ruin it. It's just going to drive you up the wall. That's why I always think people don't know. The role of the desk analyst isn't just be knowledgeable about counters. It's about presentation. It's about being fresh. It's about not hitting the same fucking idiom. It's about not saying, here's one for you. Any person, it's all the casters, who says the word he's calm, and they can't not say, like a Pavlovian dog, cool and collected. That's a cliche. Christopher Hitchens said this years ago, and I took it to heart. If any time you find yourself about to say a cliche, pause and think, how would I say that in my own words? That's why I don't just say the same things everyone else does. Because what happens if you keep using cliches is, it's like having a shortcut bound on your keyboard to a little phrase. Eventually you write a whole article, and then you read it and you go, where am I in this? I'm just sort of saying other people's words, like calm, cool and collected. Like, well, takes one to know one. All's well in the end. It's like you never said anything, mate. Whereas if you learn to rephrase it, it won't initially be as good as the idiom, because it'll be some really famous shit. But over time, you'll get a really unique way of saying things. You'll get your own slant on things, your own lines that'll become famous. So that's one thing. If you watch the analysts and their casters, they can't not say calm, cool and collected every fucking tournament.
It's it's just a lot of vamping sometimes, especially with how rounds are slow now as well. Like there's this style of CS that's really taken over, which isn't a bad thing. It's just different. It just means that there's a lot more build up in rounds, and sometimes you just got casters. They're just vamping. They're just throwing words out there so that there's no dead air. Because esports is still a hybrid commentary where it's really weird. You talk with sports broadcasters and they're just like, so you guys talk all the time. And it's like, because in sports, you don't necessarily talk all the time because it's video. People are able to see what's happening for themselves. The only thing that you talk all the time in is radio, because radio, you have to paint the picture. You have to be able to tell a person in as many words what's actually happening on the pitch, and they need to be able to see it. So what we do is like a weird hybrid in esports where it's like we're doing radio commentary, but it's video, and so we're like all over the place. It's a bit weird. So that's always been a thing, but there are definitely like vamp words or vamp phrases, like you say, that kind of they're just there for the sake of filling dead air, so that there isn't that gap. And some people do it more than others. I mean, I know the casters will forever ruin my experience listening to them. I mean, my I always feel like you should shut up if there's a hype moment and your co-commentator is in the moment of being hype. And to be fair, I did fuck around with this in the past, but I like towards the end of my career, I definitely stopped doing it, because I changed my view, which is that if your co-commentator is casting a hype moment, just let them cast the hype moment. We don't need to know that you're there. And so some commentators can't help themselves. They're always doing like ooh ooh he. It's like just it's just for the sake of reminding you that they're there and in the moment, because they're not the ones casting, but they want you to know that they're there. And so they're excited too, right? Instead of just letting their co-commentator cast. So like that nuke Anders. Okay, so that simple clip where it was at Blast last time I casted at Blast. It was that clip that made a lot of waves with the simple clutch on nuke, where Anders is casting. Like you see my body language that I'm hype. Like it was cool that Blast actually showed the camera footage of us, because you see it in my body language. I'm hype and I'm in it and all that, but you don't hear me. Anders is just doing his thing. It's all on him. It's his mic. It's his moment, and it's his clutch. You don't hear me. Like I'll have another clutch later on down the road if it comes to it, right? But that's kind of the thing where I've noticed that there's certain commentators that always have to make noise, and it's like, oh, cool, yeah, they sound so excited, but it's like, to me as a caster, it rubs me the wrong way, because it's just like, just let your co-commentator have that moment. You'll get your moment. Don't worry. There's plenty of moments in Counter-Strike. There's 30 rounds of map. It's like you'll have your moment later. Just
you finally nailed the formula that Reddit wants, though, because you had Anders casting, then they couldn't hear you.
There you go. Listen, dude, that is the way, though.
Although, if you don't know, by the way, don't worry, Semmler. They now hear Anders too and think he's washed. It's like, you can't win, can you? You just can't win at this point in time.
No, you can't win. That's the thing. That's what I learned.
I'm with you though, because I know where they got that.
Do a better job casting than to try and pander to people who are going to hate you no matter what you do.
Dude, I know where they got that from, all the new casters. They stole that from Henry. Because remember, when Matt would be doing like a really great thing, Henry would authentically, because he's just such an expert, he's seen all of Counter-Strike, he would just react like, oh, but he was like he was just doing it from a purely authentic place. He wasn't like you're saying, trying to like grab the mic. The others, like you're saying, they just want, the problem they're having is, I can tell, because these are young guys who are they're getting their first iconic moment. And what they're thinking is this. They're thinking, fuck, I'm DDK and Bardolph's casting the simple 1v2. I've got to get in on this moment. It's like you saying, like, oh, what he's doing, Scrawny. Oh, did I say the names? Oh, shit. Oh, I guess you'll have to just be upset now and still do nothing. Shut the fuck up. Level up. That's what I'm also going to do in esports, if people don't know. I'm going to be the crotchety uncle, but who actually does have your best in mind. And I do give you a little clip round the ear and go, you Canadian little bastard. Well, whatever nationality, bastard. And then, Harry, I've told Harry before, you want to carry a lot of weight in this industry. It's not supposed to be literal, you fucking idiot. Whatever. I like all these guys. Like I told you, they're like a little uncle. I'm bringing them in like, come on, you little bastard, get it together. Because I'm trying to make these guys great, and also being a bit of a dick and backdooring that in there.
There you go. All right, mini idea. Excuse me. Name a fictional story where the protagonist does something evil in the beginning, but is seen as good by everyone, including the readers, except you, of course, or gray if you can't think of one for good.
Okay. You must have one, because you've read loads of sci-fi novels and fantasy. There must be one like that where it starts out like it's like a fucking, they don't know that he's like properly evil, he's hiding it or some shit. Who would that be?
Fictional story, but where the protagonist does something evil in the beginning.
All right, I'll tell you one.
You have one on top of your head?
But spoiler alert, it does ruin this book for you if you've never read it. Essentially, that is the plot of Watchmen.
Oh.
But that is a massive spoiler. But then again, if you haven't read Watchmen, also fuck you. It's also, by the way, it's one of those things also, to be fair, it's so good, it doesn't matter if the end of the spot. It's really good to read as well. There's one, though.
That is one. Holy shit, you managed to do it. Oh, dang.
Like, what sci-fi is this in? There's got to be something that this is like, come on.
brain is not. My brain is not. Is kind of struggling on this one.
When they start out evil, but then they can just pretend to be good. Who else does that suit?
No,
Maybe Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Because he seems grey when he's with like Frodo and Sam. Like, oh, maybe
good,
it's
but
all right.
it's seen as good
Oh,
by
seen as
everyone,
good.
including the readers. That's the issue. So it's like
I
you
don't know.
need somebody who is seen as good, but who's actually doing evil in the beginning. And for whatever reason, it's like, no, the Shrike is definitely not that. Usually it's pretty like sci-fi. The reason why sci-fi a lot of the time is good is because it's like the archetypes that are there. It's really rock solid. Like the good stuff is even Neuromancer, no. Dice Man, maybe, but that's not sci-fi, but like Dice Man. But then that's like, is it evil? Is it good? Like, what is it? Because you're giving up. Have you read Reinhardt's Dice Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Okay, maybe.
That's a mad underrated book, but yeah, it's good.
Oh, that book is fucking fire. It throws a
Put it
wrench
this
in
way,
me,
it's
for
one of
sure.
those books where when you read it, you keep thinking, because it's presented as like a real, like, based on, you keep going like, this is real though. Like, this did happen to this guy, but then the problem is when it goes certain place in the story, like, no, it couldn't be, but
Oh,
it
yeah.
did, right? It's really, it's like that. It's really well set up to where like, you're not quite sure. Is it supposed to be like, is it some anti-Kaufman shit where it's fake? Is it real? Like, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's a good book. It's a good book.
All right, I've got one for you. For you. It's sort of the other way around, but the movie Memento is a bit like that, but sort of a bit differently round. Again, things are revealed in a certain way.
Oh, dude, these
There's
are
another one.
references. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, Duncan's saving me tonight. He's got that one covered.
I mean, that's a pretty hard question, to be fair.
It's just,
This guy's like, tell me something that's not what I'm thinking of, but it's like what I'm thinking of. I'm like, fuck you.
And
You
also
know
that
that-
doesn't
I know.
spoil
We're
or
not a
ruin
genie, you know. It's
anything,
just
or-
a fucking AMA. We're not an actual genie. Like, oh, genie, make me a camel with 17 legs. Like, just fucking doing a CS podcast, aren't we?
All right, well, last
And also,
question.
we're not literally Google like indexing.
Exactly. I'm just
88%. I
like
know.
off the top of my head here. Shit. Like I'm gonna have to start reading these in advance so that I can prepare some stuff. He doesn't like prepare some answers. If the questions are gonna be like this, guys, there may need to be some homework involved at this point. Not everybody is Duncan who can pull things up like this at will. All right, let's go. How do you define tactics versus strategy?
I can tell you this very easily.
I
That's
feel like
actually
this is a Googleable
it's
thing.
basically a misnomer. People in esports colloquially conflate the two. Here's the difference. I think that MSL is the classic example of tactics. What he is doing is set rounds. This is back in the day in Dignitas. He has a specific set piece of rounds that he's going to call this after that. And his main aim is to get certain ones to work by conditioning, right? Carrigan's style is a little bit more on the fly, but strategically, he has like a larger picture idea. Like, right, when I play against Spirit, I want to speed the game up a little bit and I want to attack the AWPers and keep them off guard with a lot of attrition wars, not like full saves. But then when I play against maybe Na'Vi, I slow the game down and I bait out simple and I try and force the rotations. The difference between strategy and tactics is strategy is like the big picture, like the Germans in World War II were like blitzkrieg style, like fast attacks, like quick reinforcements. But then tactics is like, here's the specific way I would execute part of my plan. Like when I attack in this way, I would do it that way. So that's the bigger difference, basically, as far as I know.
Well, that is. Hold on. Okay, so definition of tactics. While strategy is the action plan that takes you where you want to go, the tactics are the individual steps and actions that will get you there. In a business context, this means the specific actions teams take to implement the initiatives outlined in the strategy.
Let me give you an example. The
There you go.
strategy is like the idea that, like, as a company, we're going to be really mobile, fast on our feet, a lot of authentic PR. The tactic would be like the actual like business plan of like, right, but to do that, we're going to like hire a lot of like social media managers. We're going to post regularly on Thursdays and Fridays, and we're gonna, like, you see what I mean? Like the implementation is like the tactics to me.
There you go. But that seems like that is the definition as well. That the strategy is the overarching. Like we want to get here, and the tactics is how are you getting there. And what song do you have in your head right now?
I could tell you. Here's the thing. I'm actually just thinking for some reason of Salt and Pepper Push It. Like, push it. Push it, baby. Push it. I'm also amazing at karaoke, by the way. People don't know that.
Well,
We need to
That's
go
here. Oh
karaoke
yeah,
now.
here's a story. Are you ready? Fuck it. Here's one because I'm not going back there. So who gives a fuck now? One of my main moves, this is a little secret hack, is because you know in Korea they have a really cool culture, just like China, of karaoke. But it's not like the shit you're thinking of in the West. If you're in the UK, karaoke is you're in a pub in front of everyone. Everyone's all drunk. You sign up on a massive list like, oh, I want to do this song, and then you just go up there like, you know, like, you take a little piece of my heart, yeah. But you're all like pissed drunk. You're in front of people. It's embarrassing. It's just shit. It's people who think they're on X Factor, like trying to pop off because they're good singers, but they're all drunk, right? In Korea, you rent a private room and no one can hear you in that room. In that room, it's like soundproofed. And in that room, there could be you, your friends, could be 4 or 5 of you drinking. You're ordering drinks. In China, you just literally pick women and they come in with you for whatever reasons and sing the songs too. And what I would do is this, one of my date moves when the date's going well is I'd be like, let's go up and do some karaoke, and I'd go there and then they'd all pick some Korean song, and then I'd be like, right, do you want to go? No, that's a joke, whatever. That's obviously they're doing that song, aren't they? And I won't lie, I was at the time in my bachelor phase, so I was fucking around with women who just sang in a jazz band and that was their career and stuff, because that's the sort of way your daddy had it, okay? So that's how I met your mother. But then left her and never went back to Korea. Cum chum, or whatever your name is. Little skrill lord, as I used to say back in the day. Right, so they'll never get me. No alimony coming from Netherlands to Korea, mate. That's over. But here's what I would do. I would let them sing and get a few songs off, and I'd pretend like, yeah, I'm just going to drink a little bit. I like to let it settle in. And what I would actually do, Semmler, is I'd have a couple of classics that I've sung a million times at karaoke, and I would always pick, because you don't know this, I'm going to blow your minds now. You know, when you guys meet someone and you don't know the difference between Chinese people and Korean people and Japanese people, you don't know, you haven't watched a lot of their movies. So you say to them, like, where in China are you from? And they go, how dare you, sir? I am Japanese, and that is racist. No, it isn't. What that is you're someone who's from a different culture that by default we don't all know everything about, and someone's just actually made an honest attempt to connect with you by asking you, but you're such a narcissist. You've taken this as a moment to be like, a chance to make it all about me, and to go, you know what, I'm different from all of you, and I have to be treated separately. Why are you here then? Because I'm also from this country and I'm totally the same as you in every possible way. It's like you're just playing a shitty little power game there. So I don't fuck with that. But here's what's funny. You know why that also isn't racist? Because every country in the world's like that. They haven't all been brainwashed to believe they're evil. So if you go to like China, this happened to me. People at my first event in China were running after me in the street going, Grubby, Grubby. Right, Grubby is about a foot taller than me. He is Dutch. He has a massive long horse face, like some fucking spitting image character. He's got like brown hair. I have ginger and like fair hair. He didn't have a beard like that. He didn't look anything like me, but he's a European guy. And to them, with an untrained eye, we're the same. We may as well be like, you're Jackie Chan, like that fucking Family Guy skit. So that isn't racist, but here's why that applies. Because when the Koreans would try to sing the Western songs, it's not a troll. They do say R as L, and they do say these words all wrong, right? So as a result, to them, it's hard to just get the words out. So when I would go, I don't know, fuck around, Oasis, Wonderwall. I remember that. Put it on. And then obviously I'll be like, hey, you're my Wonderwall. And then they're all like, oh, here's Pro. Hey, Pro singer. Oh, Pro. And then they'd be, oh, you'll sing another. And then I'll be like, well, could do that. Don't look back in anger. I'm not even that good, mate. I'm doing it like a fucking bastard. They're all just eating on my hand. Oh, Thorin, you're so fucking sick at this music. And I would just be whole time soul juice flowing. Yeah, baby. And then you know what? I'd take it up a notch. Oh, you like that, do you? Eminem. Let's go through some of that, shall we? Like, cleaning up my closet. They can't even believe I'm getting all these words off of the lyrics. Then I'd just hit them with some like Rage Against the Machine, killing the name of some of those who work forces. The same to build crosses. And I'll just be, listen, mate, all I'm saying is that was the closer. That was the closing stanza of the night. Then I went home, deal done. There you go.
Note.
There you go.
There we go.
It was basically
Well,
like a really shitty version of the movie Last Samurai, if he just was a prick at the end anyway.
Done. All right. Well, that's a good place to call it for a night, man. Thanks again for carrying the weight tonight. Definitely saved it. And thanks everybody to tuning in. If you made it this far, I hope you guys leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscription, especially if you're listening on Spotify and iTunes and all that. Be sure to leave a little review. It doesn't matter. Even one word helps. The algo god requires his sacrifices. So please leave a little something. But thanks everybody as always for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with some more news on Counter-Strike and some more tales. But until then, have a good one.
Chris is still in the picture. Still very much in the round.